slipping under the covers. His heart constricted at the range of emotions in her eyes, and he wondered if he wasn't being selfish for bringing her there. When Aria's alarm woke her up a few hours later, the first thing she noticed was that the adjoining door was now shut, indicating that Nathaniel was awake. Blinking, she got up, her mind already occupied with the routine she had planned for herself, while also worrying about Nathaniel's erratic sleeping pattern. She had no idea about Nathaniel's plans for the day, but she decided to take advantage of the early start. Despite knowing that her sons were safe with Anita and her aunt, she didn't want them to begin the day without seeing her. Mrs. Watson had arranged interviews with 2 candidates each for the positions of nanny and driver for the twins, scheduled for Wednesday, her day off. She intended to have Anita help her supervise whoever she chose for at least a week before Anita returned to Alaska. Aria hadn't broached the subject of Anita leaving yet, as she didn't want to pressure her friend. While she would have preferred Anita to stay on as the boys' nanny, she understood that it wouldn't be fair to her friend, who had her own life and responsibilities back in Alaska. Quickly, she hurried into the bathroom to complete her morning routine, taking a bath and getting ready for the day. Afterward, she dressed in her jogging clothes and headed out. Meanwhile, Nathaniel's eyes instinctively glanced at the time when he spotted Aria outside on the front lawn, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips as she began jogging out of the compound. He picked up his phone and dialed the kitchen as he watched her disappear from view. "Good morning, sir," Nathaniel's housekeeper answered the call. "Good morning, Mrs. Jonas. Are Charles and Andrew there with you?" Nathaniel inquired. "Yes, sir, they have just arrived," she replied. "Let me speak with Andrew," Nathaniel requested, and soon Andrew's deep voice sounded from the other end. "Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne," Andrew said. "Good morning. Listen, Dr. Everly is going for a jog right now. It's too quiet out there, so locate her and discreetly trail her for her safety." "Ensure she doesn't notice you," Nathaniel instructed. "Yes, sir," Andrew affirmed. "Take Charles with you," Nathaniel added, before ending the call. Aria jogged through the serene streets of Manhattan from 5th Avenue until she reached Madison Square Park, about half a kilometer from Nathaniel's house. Pausing to catch her breath, she observed other early risers engaged in their morning jogs before discreetly scanning the area for any signs of being followed. Satisfied, she pulled up the hood of her jacket to conceal her hair and made her way to Madison Avenue. Upon reaching the entrance of her rented apartment building, she used her keycard to gain entry. "Good morning, Dr. Everly," one of the security personnel greeted her as she passed through the lobby. "Hello, Jack," Aria responded cheerfully. "Say hello to Owen and Liam for me," another security guard called out. "I will." "Thanks," Aria replied with a laugh before stepping into the elevator, overhearing the security guards discussing her boys with fondness. Despite their brief time in the building, Owen's habit of sharing his food and Liam's penchant for greeting everyone with a wave had already made them well known. Aria often excused their behavior by attributing it to their Alaskan roots, expecting some disapproval, but was pleasantly surprised by the warm reception they received. Taking the private elevator to their floor, she hurried into their open-floor living room. "Good morning," her aunt greeted her, already bustling in the kitchen preparing breakfast. Her aunt had always been an early riser, regardless of the day or occasion, so Aria wasn't surprised to find her up. "Good morning, Auntie," Aria replied, hurrying behind the kitchen counter to give the older woman a hug. "Thank you so much for doing this for me," Aria expressed, gratitude evident in her tone. Her aunt chuckled and patted her on the forearm. "I see you survived the first night," the older woman remarked. "You can say that," Aria replied. Julia Davies, Nathaniel's fiancée, caused a bit of drama in a bid to mark her territory, Aria explained. Her aunt arched an eyebrow. "Already?" Aria nodded. "Yes. I don't even know if Nathaniel's lawyer, Tom Hill, the one I told you about, I don't know if he still has a job. She wanted him fired," Aria continued. "What? Why?" her aunt inquired, concern evident in her voice. Aria quickly filled her in before heading into the boys' room to wake them up. "Good morning, my darlings," she cooed as the two began to stir. Anita emerged a few minutes later, just as Aria and her aunt were serving the boys. "I don't know about you all, but this feels like a vacation," Anita remarked as she joined them. "Except I can't escape these little munchkins," she added, wrapping her arms around Owen and Liam. eliciting laughter from everyone. "Tell the truth, you will miss them," Aria teased her friend, handing her a cup of coffee. "Thanks," Anita replied, accepting the coffee and taking a seat. "You're right. I will miss them terribly, which is why I'm considering staying longer. Maybe you should hold off hiring a nanny just yet and hire a driver who knows the city well enough to take us around," Anita suggested. Aria gave her friend a searching gaze. "Are you sure?" she asked. Anita nodded. "I promise if I get overwhelmed we will hire a nanny," she assured. "Since Aria wants the boys homeschooled for now, we could get a home tutor instead. Anita and I can keep an eye on them and make sure they are doing fine," Aria's aunt proposed. Aria nodded thoughtfully. Hiring a home tutor could help, given she couldn't be there to teach the boys herself. "Okay, Anita, but you have to agree to accept payment," Aria insisted. "Have you forgotten you've paid me 2 years in advance for my nursing job back home?" Anita replied with a widened gaze. "Whatever, you must accept something," Aria countered. "I already did. Plus, I'm staying here for free, eating for free, and getting to spend time with these adorables. And exploring New York sightseeing with the boys for free too." "I dare say I have been generously compensated," Anita joked. Aria went to give her a hug. "Thank you, you are the best," she said with great relief. Liam, who was eating his favorite cereal, halted his actions and with furrowed brows piped in, "I thought I was the best," making everyone laugh, especially when Owen chimed in with a bored glance. "Mommy says that to everyone, Liam. Owen!" Aria protested, playfully scolding her son. Owen comically cringed and muttered, "Sowie!" Darting furtive glances at everyone, Aria stifled a laugh. Aria timed herself, and exactly an hour later, she was on her way, jogging back to the house. Along the way, she thought she saw someone following her, but each time she looked back, there was no one there. "Get a grip, Aria," she murmured under her breath. Nathaniel had finished his bath and was dressing up, wearing his shirt when he saw Aria return. He checked the time and realized 2 hours had passed since she'd left. A few minutes after she entered the compound, Charles and Andrew got back too and went inside. Trying to attach his gold cufflinks to his sleeves, Nathaniel walked away from the glass wall and went to open the adjoining door, catching Aria in the midst of undressing. "Oh my God, damn it, Nathan, haven't you heard of knocking?" Aria protested as she quickly grabbed her hooded top to hold against her chest. Nathaniel stood there on the threshold adjoining the 2 rooms, staring at her. She was as beautiful as he remembered, and he had caught a glimpse of her full chest before she covered them. He could see she had grown bigger, and his body instantly responded to the breathtaking sight of her beautiful curvy body. He couldn't remember the last time he thought of having sex or was even slightly stimulated, and one look at her had got him instantly in the mood. Aria glowered at him when he continued to stand there looking back at her. Her heart raced at his darkened gaze and how his eyes lazily traveled down the length of her body. Nathaniel had always had the gift to make her want to kill him and love him at the same time. The familiar feeling swirled inside her, making her breathing quicken. "Do you mind?" she snapped, wishing he would turn away and shut the door before she lost her mind and threw off the top she used to cover her chest at him. Nathaniel smiled, arching an eyebrow at her. "I can literally draw you in the nude, blindfolded Aria," he said in a voice that sounded like a drawl and was deeper and huskier than usual. Aria felt her face and neck heating up as a result of his comment. "Nathaniel!" she called in protest. "Fine," he said, chuckling as he turned away and walked back to his room, leaving the adjoining door open. "Idiot," Aria murmured under her breath in annoyance, getting even more irritated when she felt turned on. She went to have her bath and came out wearing a bathrobe. "Aria?" She heard Nathaniel calling for her hesitantly, followed by a long pause. A frown furrowed her eyebrows, and she quickly went into his room, tying her bathrobe firmly around her waist. Nathaniel was seated on the foam-padded chest at the foot of his bed, leaning over with elbows resting on his thighs. Aria could see that he was fully dressed in a white shirt and grey trousers, complete with a matching coloured beanie cap. However, his striped tie was simply draped over his neck, and his sleeves were left unbuttoned. "Nathan," she called with a hint of worry in her voice when he didn't say anything to her. She lowered to her knees in between his legs. Nathan slowly raised his face, looking into her eyes as she searched his gaze. "I can't fix my cufflinks," he said in a quiet, deep voice, raising his hands, letting her see how his hands were shaking terribly. "Okay," she replied in a playful drawl. "But you know, this is not an issue. After all, you keep transferring that substantial amount of money into my account for precisely this reason, right? So I can be here to lend an extra hand," Aria said with a hint of humor as she continued to hold his gaze, even though her heart was breaking for him at his reaction to his helplessness and how he had hesitated to call for help. "True, you're right. Perhaps we should leave the adjoining door permanently open, so I wouldn't need to call out before you know I need help," Nathaniel replied, trying to play along. Even though he had been the one to force her to come be with him, he still hated that his body was giving up on him, and she was there to see it. "Julia would not like that, Nathan," Aria replied. "I thought we were focusing on what I need, not what Julia likes," he replied and arched an eyebrow daringly. "So then does Tom Hill still have his job?" Aria asked. Nathaniel held her gaze, understanding exactly what she was asking him. "Tom Hill works for me, not Julia, Aria. Only I decide who gets fired around here," he replied. Aria let out a sigh of relief. "Why do you care?" he asked, scrutinizing her closely. "He's too old for you, Aria." "That would be abominable," he added with a hint of jest. Aria feigned shock and playfully tapped him on the shoulder, eliciting a chuckle from him. "Get your mind out of the gutter, Nathan. The backup story wasn't as scandalous as you imagined. I just appreciated that he stood up for me in his own way," Aria replied, lowering her gaze. "That's a first. I have never known you to let someone else fight your battles, or perhaps that was one of the things I, in particular, was not allowed to do for you," Nathaniel said, giving her a keen scrutiny. Making a sport of her was distracting him from the fact that his hands were still shaking. "There, all done," Aria said as she finished helping him hook up his cufflinks, trying very hard not to make body contact with him. Nathaniel raised his jaw, drawing her attention to his tie. Aria swallowed softly and leaned closer. This close to him, she could smell his rich cologne and see every sharp angle of his perfectly molded face, and of course him opening up his legs further for her to fit in between his long thighs didn't escape her notice. She reached for the tie, her heart racing at how close they were now. Nathaniel contained the urge to hold her by the waist and draw her closer to press her body against the apex of his legs. His breathing quickened as the image formed in his head, but it was impossible not to notice that Aria was equally affected by their proximity. "Where did you go earlier?" he suddenly asked, making Aria freeze. "What?" she muttered in an almost inaudible voice, halting her actions to stare into his eyes, forgetting to breathe. "Where did you go on Madison Avenue, Aria?" he asked again. Aria swallowed hard. "Did you have me followed?" Aria retorted. "I have a team of active bodyguards who also go for morning runs, Aria. They are well aware of our history and would easily recognize you. You don't think you're the only one who goes for early morning runs, do you?" Nathaniel told a partial truth, quietly observing her. While it was true that his bodyguards also went for morning runs and had witnessed his passionate affair with Aria, he had indeed ordered Aria to be followed, not only for her protection, but also to keep tabs on her movements. Aria swallowed hard, realizing she had been right. Someone had seen her. She shrugged, trying to stay calm and not accidentally give anything away. "I went jogging, Nathan. Madison Square and Madison Avenue are not far apart after all. It's just half a kilometer from here, hardly a challenge." "Back home, I used to run for at least a kilometer, even with the snow," Aria said as she made to move back from him. Nathaniel, not ready to have her draw back from him, reflexively reached forward to stop her by grabbing her waist to pull her back against his body. Aria let out a shaky breath, her eyes darting as she threw him a sharp look. Nathaniel quickly let go, raising his hands away from her. "Sorry," he muttered, watching as she got up and put enough distance between them. "What are your plans for today?" Aria asked, wanting to gloss over the awkward silence that had ensued. "I was working on a project before I started chemo. I would like to get back to that, which means you would be spending the day cooped up in my lab with me. But don't worry, I promise to make it worth your while," Nathaniel said. "I didn't know you were involved in the development and production of pharmaceutical drugs at Farmer Hawthorne," Aria said, genuinely impressed by the revelation. I pursued additional courses in pharmaceutical engineering and botanical medicine after Harvard, Nathaniel replied, his warm smile reflecting his passion for the subject. You're not the only one with the drive to make a real impact on the world, Dr. Everly, he teased. Aria raised an eyebrow and rolled her eyes, a too familiar gesture that made him chuckle softly. She couldn't help but smile at the sound of his laughter. Botanical medicine? I'm impressed. What were you working on? Aria inquired, her smile mirroring his enthusiasm. I trust you won't go selling my ideas to the competition, will you? Nathaniel teased back, enjoying their playful banter. It depends. You seem like a generous employer. I'm sure you can pay me enough to keep my mouth shut, Aria replied in a honeyed tone, a playful smirk stretching her sexy lips. Nathaniel chuckled. And here I thought I had your undying loyalty, he pretended to lament, causing Aria to giggle and cover her mouth with her hands. Very well, since you believe I have enough money to buy your silence, I suppose it's safe to share, he said with mock seriousness, eliciting more laughter from Aria. I'm currently researching a botanical-based pharmaceutical formulation aimed at restoring immune function compromised by oncogenic factors, thereby bolstering the body's ability to mount an effective defense against immunological assaults, he explained. Aria met his gaze and nodded thoughtfully. A herbal drug like that could repair the immune system compromised by cancerous elements, empowering the body to better defend itself against immune system threats, she remarked. Nathaniel smiled appreciatively. It's a challenging project, but worthwhile, he acknowledged. However, Aria couldn't shake the concern that reviving the project, especially given his condition, might not be a wise idea. Nathaniel needed rest and constant monitoring, not to plunge himself into a project that could potentially overexert him. Nathan. Aria called and paused, making him direct his gaze at her. Yes, he prompted. I've reviewed your medical report. It's clear you shouldn't be pushing yourself too hard. You need to prioritize taking your medication, getting enough rest, and conserving your energy in preparation for the surgery. Aria started to say in a low, pleading tone, but was interrupted by a sharp retort. Dr. Everly, I recall letting you know that I do not wish to discuss that particular issue with you, Nathaniel snapped. Nathan, please, Aria whispered with feeling. He looked away from her and said in a cold, withdrawn tone, please go get dressed. We leave as soon as you are ready, he said. Aria paused for about a minute before she turned and left, shutting the adjoining door. Nathaniel let out a shaky breath when the door closed. He wanted to maintain his stance and yell at her to leave the damn door open, but he shut his eyes instead, taking a calming breath. Slowly he raised the hands he had used to hold her by the waist and slowly smoothed them down his thighs. He swore he could still feel her warmth against his palms, transferring the heat to his body. The act had a strangely calming effect on him that made the back of his eyes prick with tears. He hated that he had lost control with her and felt vulnerable, wishing he could get up and go to her. Explain why he had given up, let her know that hope hadn't done much for him in the past months. He longed to gather her in his arms, feel her body against his again, have her wrap her arms around his waist as she used to do and press her face to his chest, inhaling his scent. He would do just about anything to have her hold him again, but he knew it would do no good. He got up gingerly, feeling weak but refusing to call for a wheelchair to be brought up for him. He went to stand by the glass wall, watching the city come to life as the first light of dawn illuminated the skyline. Abdominal pain began to gnaw at him, and he took quick, shallow breaths in an attempt to contain the discomfort, even though he knew it was futile. After a brief interval, a gentle knock on the adjoining door signaled Aria's readiness. Inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly, he made his way toward the door, emitting a low growl as the pain in his stomach tightened its grip. Despite the agony, he pressed on, though his movements slowed. Waiting for him in the hallway, Aria appeared visibly upset, still smarting from his earlier outburst and his refusal to listen to her. Avoiding eye contact, she moved ahead, but a nagging feeling prompted her to glance back, and upon seeing him, she sensed immediately that something was amiss. Hastening back to his side, she reached for his hand, interlocking her fingers with his, matching his halting strides. Nathaniel cast her a side glance, his eyes reflecting acute pain and emotions. Aria met his gaze. and the two shared a silent understanding. "I need to do this," Nathaniel whispered, his voice deep and soothing. Aria nodded, swallowing against the lump in her throat. "Will you be having breakfast and taking your medicine before we go?" Aria asked, in an equally gentle tone. "If you don't mind sharing a meal with me, we can eat in the office. I'm sure Tom has taken care of that. He's also in charge of my medication. He acts as if someone would poison me if he dared turn his back," Nathaniel replied. Aria smiled. "I noticed he's protective of you," she replied, as they entered the elevator, still holding his hand. Nathaniel held onto her hand tightly, unconsciously starting to stroke the back of her hand with his thumb. The conversation, her touch, and the way she maintained eye contact and looked up into his eyes strangely helped him take his mind off the pain in his stomach. "He's my godfather," Nathaniel replied. "Oh," Aria exclaimed in surprise. "That explains it," she added. "That's why he gets away with a lot of things. Sometimes he forgets I'm a damn grown man," Nathaniel said with irritation. Aria chuckled. "So will you?" Nathaniel asked. "Will I what?" Aria replied, bemused. "Share my awfully healthy meal with me?" Nathaniel inquired. "I would love to," Aria replied. He nodded, and for a moment the two locked eyes. The elevator chimed as it reached the first floor, and the two stepped out into the foyer. "Good morning, Miss Davies," Aria heard someone say from outside the house. Julia Davies replied, and Aria watched as she threw the bag she was holding at the maid as she made her way inside. Noting that she and Nathaniel were still holding hands, Aria quickly let go and stepped away from him. Nathaniel acted as if he didn't notice, but he did, and he resented Julia's intrusion. "Oh, good morning, darling," Julia called out in a lovely sing-song voice as she spotted Nathaniel in the foyer. She hurried over to him, standing on her toes to kiss him on the lips. Aria watched as Nathaniel's hands automatically held the woman's waist, and she looked away, her heart constricting. "What are you doing here so early, Julia?" Nathaniel asked in an emotionless tone. "Celine called me last night to let me know my wedding gown was ready," she said in excitement. "Okay," Nathaniel replied in a bland tone. Julia rolled her eyes at Nathaniel's response. "She wants me to come and try it on to make sure it fits perfectly," Julia explained. "All right." "That still doesn't explain why you're here," Nathaniel said. "Naomi is feeling unwell and couldn't come with me, so I've come to borrow your caregiver. I want Dr. Everly to accompany me and be my PA for today. She's a woman and should be able to give her opinion on how the dress looks on me and help take pictures. Also, I want a second opinion on the choice of cake and dessert for the reception," Julia said. Aria's heart skipped a beat. "What?" Nathaniel asked in an incredulous tone, echoing Aria's own surprise. "Why are you looking at me like that? I can ask her to accompany me, can't I?" "You were the one who demanded that I get along with her," Julia said. "Yes, but this is ridiculous. She isn't here for your fashion emergencies. She's my caregiver." "Do you even grasp who this woman is?" Nathaniel said incredulously, genuinely shocked at Julia's audacity. "She's a woman regardless of her expertise." "My God, don't be extra," Julia scoffed. "She's standing here and can speak for herself." Aria interjected in a mocking tone. The two stopped arguing to look at her. Aria let out a sigh. "How long would it take?" she added, surprising Nathaniel. "See, she doesn't mind," Julia said, beaming with delight. "Dr. Everly, what are you doing?" Nathaniel asked through gritted teeth. They had a plan. Why was she trying to give that up for Julia's whim? Aria figured that if Nathaniel was going to marry the woman, she had to get to know her to see if her boys would be safe around her. What better way to find out than by spending a few hours with Julia, even if she would rather jump off a cliff than do that? If what she needs me for wouldn't take more than 2 or 3 hours, I suppose I could go with her, and your driver can pick me up to meet you at the office, Aria suggested. Nathaniel felt his heart constrict painfully. The Aria he knew would rather tear her hair out than spend a second in the company of any female she knew he had been with. But that was when he was convinced she loved him. Scenes of their separation flashed in his head like a sledgehammer to the skull. He lowered his gaze, taking a calming breath. The pain gnawing at his gut, coupled with the ache in his heart, was almost unbearable now. It shouldn't take more than 2.5 hours, max. "I also have things to do, Nathaniel," Julia said. "Whatever," he muttered in response, turned and walked away. Aria did her best to keep her expression neutral. She could tell Nathaniel didn't like what she had done. In the past, he would have made a scene until he got his way. Even though him walking away now showed improvement in his character, she weirdly missed the old him that refused to be repressive. It was weird because she used to call it tantrums and hated it when he created a scene, causing her embarrassment. Ignore him, he simply likes to have his way and gets butthurt when he doesn't, Julia said, laughing. But Aria wasn't fooled. She'd begun to regret her decision, but she figured it was something she must do for her boys. Aria glanced at her wristwatch and said, "We must hurry. I'm supposed to be at his office when he eats and takes his medication," she lied. Julia forced a smile, which slowly eased off her face. "Let's get this straight before we step out of this house. In the event of Nathaniel's absence, I am your boss." "So when I say jump, you say how high?" Julia said with cold disdain. Aria considered not responding, opting to keep the peace, but she felt Julia was deliberately being disrespectful and decided to address the attitude. She glanced at the time again and replied, with a smile, "That's 5 minutes wasted. I can assure you, Miss Davies, that when it's exactly 2.5 hours, as you said you needed me for, I will leave to get on with my day." Julia looked taken aback by her tone, but quickly recovered, giving Aria a sly smile. "You really think you're untouchable? Why? Because Nathaniel had a fling with you at some point in his life? If you meant anything to him, anything at all, why isn't he marrying you now?" "I'll tell you why. Because you were just a quick lay, like many before you. So don't go thinking that you're special because you know how to cut a human being open," Julia said. "Here we go," Aria thought to herself, letting out a sigh. "Miss Davies, I don't know what you have heard happened between me and Nathaniel Hawthorne, and frankly, it isn't any of your business. Just like whatever is happening now between you and him is none of mine. I am here in a professional capacity, and for some reason, you keep dragging me into whatever insecurities you have going on in your little mind. Truly, I wish you well. I would just love it if you stopped projecting your insecurities on me," Aria said. Julia, enraged at the other woman's temerity, raised her hand to slap Aria, but Aria caught her wrist midair, held the hand as Julia growled in annoyance before forcefully pushing her backwards and away from her. Julia quickly checked her wrist, noting Aria had left a bruise. But before she could react again, Aria had walked past her, heading to the foyer exit. "Hey, stop right there, you bitch! I am not done with you," Julia protested indignantly, but Aria ignored her. Meanwhile, still simmering silently over Julia's recent antics and Aria's compliance, Nathaniel slipped into the back seat of his Jeep and slammed the door shut, taking deep breaths to quell the turmoil within him. The driver waited patiently for about a minute, allowing Nathaniel to compose himself before starting the engine and pulling away. As they drove, Nathaniel noticed his driver periodically glancing back through the rearview mirror, evidently intrigued by something happening behind them. "Sir, I thought you said I was to pick up Dr. Everly later," the driver asked. "Yes," Nathaniel replied. "I think something is happening," the driver said, sounding concerned. "Should we go back, sir?" Puzzled, Nathaniel looked back through the rearview mirror and saw Aria hurrying down the front porch with Julia standing at the top of the stairs, yelling, "I'm talking to you! What could be going on?" The driver commented, his worry evident. "Should we go back, sir?" he asked again. Nathaniel didn't immediately reply as he continued to study Aria carefully, noting the stubborn set of her jaw, the determination etched on her face, and her clenched fists. A slow smile gradually stretched his lips. Chuckling, Nathaniel settled back into his seat with a relief sigh and said, "Turn back, let's go get Dr. Everly." "Yes, sir," the driver replied, and quickly turned the Jeep around. Aria had always possessed zero tolerance for Nathaniel's relationship dramas. No matter how diplomatically she attempted to handle the situations, they inevitably spiraled out of control, resembling wild animals unleashed. Unable to bear Julia's incessant shouting any longer, Aria resolved to walk to Madison Park if necessary, rather than return to the chaos of the house. She simply needed to distance herself from the hysterical woman before she said something regrettable. Just as she contemplated her escape, a Jeep approached, slowing to a halt. Nathaniel rolled down the window and remarked, "I see it didn't take long for you to change your mind." Aria shot him a glare. Nathaniel felt an inexplicable surge of joy. "Need a ride?" he quipped, raising an eyebrow. With a resigned sigh, Aria circumvented the car to enter from the other side. As the driver turned the Jeep around and they began to depart, Nathaniel commented, "You had me worried for a moment there. First, you let Tom act as your buffer, and now opt for pragmatism. I was beginning to wonder if you'd been replaced by an alien." "Nathan, just because you're sick doesn't mean I would not hit you," Aria retorted. Nathaniel averted his gaze, trying to conceal a laugh. Aria, catching on, playfully swatted him on the shoulder, noticing how it shook with suppressed laughter. "So are you not going to ask me what happened?" Aria inquired. "I'm certain she's going to ask you to fire me." Nathaniel waved off her statement. "I can make an educated guess, knowing Julia. But don't worry, I'm sure I'll get an earful from her. I'd prefer to keep my morning a bit less eventful. Though I must inform you, Dr. Everly, that I'm in considerable pain," Nathaniel confessed. Aria's irritation dissipated, replaced by concern. Amidst the interruption caused by Julia, she had forgotten about Nathaniel's evident discomfort. Reaching for his hand, she moved closer, enveloping his hand between hers. "Do you have any of your pain medication with you?" Aria asked, her worry thinly veiled. "I would if Tom were here, but he had to leave early for the office to attend to some legal matters," Nathaniel replied. "Shall we stop at the nearest pharmacy to get NSAIDs or corticosteroids?" "Either would alleviate abdominal discomfort," Aria suggested. "We're in luck. One of Farmer Hawthorne's pharmacy outlets is just around the corner," Nathaniel replied, grinning. His phone began to ring, and he took quick, shallow breaths before retrieving it from the pocket of his jacket. Seeing that it was Julia calling, he let out a sigh before answering, his voice clearly strained. "Yes," he said into the phone. "I want Dr. Everly replaced. I know you prefer her, but I can't tolerate her blatant disrespect. I extended an olive branch, and she chose to be rude and dismissive. I understand she's highly qualified, but we can find someone better," Julia demanded. "I can't discuss this right now," Nathaniel replied. "Nathaniel, I won't accept being brushed off. Either you let her go, or the wedding is off," Julia threatened. "Are you certain you want to go through with this?" Nathaniel's voice turned chilly. "Yes, I'm going to seek a few recommendations and find you a more suitable, qualified professional," Julia replied. "You've misunderstood, Julia. I asked if you meant your threat," he clarified forcefully. "Nathaniel, surely you're not going to let me end our engagement over some basic bitch," Julia's tone wavered. "It was your decision." "I'm just confirming it," Nathaniel replied, ignoring her jab against Aria, knowing fully well that Julia knew that Aria was far from basic. There was silence at the other end for about a minute before Julia continued. "Perhaps we need a break. This woman has clearly bewitched you. I'm going to end this call now, Julia, before you bury yourself deeper into the hole you are bent on digging right now," Nathaniel interrupted and cut the line. Aria gazed out of the car window, trying to give Nathaniel some semblance of privacy while he took his call. As a result of their proximity, and despite that the voice from the other end was faint, Aria still caught every word exchanged. She didn't appreciate how her presence seemed to stir trouble between Nathaniel and Julia, but she refused to shoulder responsibility for the other woman's insecurities. Having experienced such feelings herself, loving a man whose commitment remained uncertain, Aria understood the turmoil it could cause, especially when that man was Nathaniel Hawthorne, an enigmatic blend of light and darkness, possessing the charm of the devil himself, coupled with the wealth to achieve anything he desired. Being with such a man could easily cloud one's judgment, blurring the lines between his godlike allure and his human flaws. "Shall we head to the pharmacy, sir?" The driver's voice interrupted, breaking the tense silence that lingered after Nathaniel's phone call. "Yes, please," Nathaniel responded curtly, his voice tinged with irritation. Aria stole a sidelong glance at him and noticed his furrowed brows and clenched jaw as he stared out the window. It was evident he was upset. Her eyes drifted down to the hand he placed beside him on the chair, and despite her self-preservative instinct, disapproving of what she was imagining doing, the need to comfort him overrode her senses. She reached out, laying her hand over his, interlocking their fingers without lifting his hand. She did it before she realized how intimate the gesture seemed. Nathaniel's breath caught at her warm touch, momentarily distracting him from his anger. Glancing at Aria, he saw her staring out of the window, and a smile tugged at his lips at her gesture. Her unexpected display of affection surprised and warmed his heart, knowing it wasn't something she would typically do. Lowering his gaze to their intertwined fingers, he tightened his grip, gently stroking the back of her small, slim hand with his thumb. As they sat there, memories flooded Nathaniel's mind, and he recalled a different time when their fingers were intertwined just like this, but for a very different reason. It wasn't comfort then, but rather the inability to resist each other's touch any longer. The intensity of that memory washed over him like a tidal wave, evoking emotions he had long suppressed. His breathing quickened, his skin tingled with warmth, and he flinched, hastily disentangling his hand from hers, trying to escape the overwhelming rush of emotions threatening to consume him and transport him back to a time he yearned to forget. Luckily, they had arrived at the pharmacy. The need to breathe in fresh air overwhelmed him. "Park here," Nathaniel's voice cut through the air sharp and cold. The car barely came to a stop before he flung the door open and got out. The hand Aria had held now clenched into a fist. Nathaniel fought an internal battle to push aside the memory of her touch. "Dr. Everly, are you coming?" he asked, peering into the car at Aria, who was slightly taken aback by his abrupt withdrawal. Feeling a mix of confusion and embarrassment for initiating contact, she nodded and came out through his door. A frown creased her forehead as she wondered if his reaction stemmed from his pain, his phone call with Julia, or the fact that she had attempted to comfort him. She resolved never to do so again. Their visit to the pharmacy was brief. Aria was surprised when the elderly manager recognized her, recalling her pictures from medical magazines despite it being 4 years ago. The fact that Nathaniel was quiet throughout did not escape her notice. Back in the car, Nathaniel took Aria's prescribed dose before reclining his head against the headrest, his hands resting firmly on his thighs. After a short drive, the car stopped in front of an imposing building. 2 men in black suits opened the door for Nathaniel, greeting him in unison as he stepped out. Nathaniel quickly circled the car to open Aria's door, meeting her gaze with a raised eyebrow. "Dr. Everly," he said in his formal tone. "Thanks," she mumbled as he stepped back to let her disembark. Ensuring she was by his side, Nathaniel led the way through the building entrance, flanked by 2 guards. Farmer Hawthorne's expansive lobby featured visitors' chairs attached to the wall, curving along with the circular architecture. A digital billboard screen displayed Farmer Hawthorne's drugs and their uses in a cartoonish presentation. Aria observed 4 receptionists attending to visitors and 2 guards stationed at each exit. As they passed, the receptionists rose to greet Nathaniel, but he didn't acknowledge them. Aria followed him to the elevator, noticing a uniformed guard inside who promptly stepped out upon their arrival. "Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne." "Madam," the guard said in greeting. Nathaniel mumbled a reply. "Good morning," Aria said as she joined him inside the elevator. The security personnel remained outside, leaving them alone as the doors closed. Nathaniel let out a sigh, his gaze fixed on the closed doors, seemingly oblivious to Aria's presence. "Are you okay?" Aria inquired. Nathaniel threw her a sideways glance, his left eyebrow raised in question. Aria suddenly realized they were standing closely, and she could see the tiny specks of color in his beautiful eyes. "I mean, is the medication working?" she added. "If it weren't, Dr. Everly, those guards would have to support me through that lobby and up to my office," Nathaniel replied, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "You could simply use a wheelchair, you know, to be on the safer side," she suggested with genuine concern. "I don't like wheelchairs," he said simply, then looked away from her. Aria searched his expression, her heart filled with emotion. "It's for your safety, Nathan," she remarked gently. Nathaniel didn't respond. When the elevator doors opened to another lobby, smaller than the previous one, Nathaniel stepped out, and Aria followed. 2 receptionists sat behind a curved desk, both rising to greet them. One was a brunette, the other a blonde, both with model-like figures, tall and slim. The brunette wore glasses. Aria noticed the blonde quickly adjusting her blouse and hair, trying to appear perfect. She pushed her chest out and smiled eagerly to offer her greetings. However, Nathaniel walked past the reception table without a glance, even as the blonde raised her voice higher. Nathaniel mumbled a distracted reply to their greetings and strode past, saying, "Let Mr. Hill know that I am in the building." "He knows, Mr. Hawthorne," the brunette replied, then turned her attention to Aria with a polite smile. "Welcome, Dr. Everly. The blonde stared at Aria with an unfriendly air, sizing her up as if she were a potential rival. "Thank you," Aria replied to the brunette's greetings, ignoring the other receptionist as she walked by. "Is that Mr. Hawthorne's new doctor?" Aria heard a female voice inquire from behind her, likely the blonde receptionist. Her tone was laced with suspicion and malice. "How should I know? But I know she is Dr. Everly," another voice replied. "Well, who is she? She looks too young to be any kind of doctor," the blonde demanded. "If you take the time to read medical journals instead of fashion magazines, you might have a clue," the other receptionist retorted with a hiss. "Dr. Everly," Nathaniel called from the end of the hallway, prompting Aria to quicken her pace. The voices of the receptionists became indistinct. Nathaniel's office was incredibly spacious, with his desk tucked into the corner beside a glass wall. On the other side of the room, a buttoned leather settee sat with a sturdy coffee table at its center, while a large three-seater, suspiciously comfortable and sizable, rested against another wall. Aria couldn't help but wonder if Nathaniel had used it as a bed at some point. Beyond the settee arrangement, Aria noticed another door leading to another room. From where she stood, she could catch a glimpse of the top of a microscope through the glass panel. Intrigued, she crossed the room to the see-through door and peered inside, quickly noting it was a pharmacological lab, adorned with various expensive instruments used in drug research. There was a high-performance liquid chromatography machine, its intricate columns and detectors gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Next to it, a mass spectrometer stood tall, used for analyzing the molecular composition of compounds with precision. On the far side of the lab, a centrifuge hummed softly. She recalled the machine was used for separating mixtures based on their density. Nearby was a spectrophotometer used for measuring the absorption of light by chemical substances. Rows of glassware lined the countertops, some filled with colorful liquids. A digital display screen adorned one small corner wall, while a transparent one stood at the side, adjacent to the counter, lending the lab an air of futuristic sophistication. "So, this is your lab," she remarked. "Yes, but it serves more than that purpose. It's convenient to have it set up here for me to work undisturbed and to showcase demonstrations for prospective investors and customers," Nathaniel explained. "Your office feels like a sanctuary." "It would be easy to lose track of time once you're immersed in your work," Aria observed, turning to meet his gaze. "I see Tom has been sharing notes with you, Dr. Everly," Nathaniel remarked. "Whatever accusations have been thrown my way, I am innocent," Tom Hill breezed in, followed by 6 people in chef's uniforms. "Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne. Good morning, madam," the uniformed kitchen staff greeted as they arranged various delicacies on the coffee table, filling the room with enticing aromas. Thank you," Tom said to the staff as they left. Closing the door behind them, he turned to Aria and Nathaniel, asking, "What accusations are we discussing?" Nathaniel scoffed and Aria chuckled. He simply assumed you might have divulged something about his work habits given how his office is set up, Aria explained. Tom chuckled. "You'd make a great detective, Dr. Everly, but I suppose such skills are essential in your profession. Quickly diagnosing what may be wrong with your patient is crucial, after all." If I may add, I was a bit nervous when I heard Nathaniel had decided to return to work, considering... "Tom, you're unnervingly chatty this morning," Nathaniel interjected. "Don't you, have something important to do?" He added with a raised eyebrow, his tone pointed, but it was clearly not enough to unsettle Tom. "As a matter of fact, I do have something to attend to, and I hope you'll forgive me if I don't stay for breakfast as usual. I was hoping Dr. Everly would keep you company while I quickly ran some errands," Tom said, retrieving a notepad-like diary and a small box-like bag from a side cabinet. "Errands? What errands?" Nathaniel inquired, but Aria noticed Tom acted as if he hadn't heard, approaching her instead. "Here are Nathaniel's medications. I've written down clear instructions in case anything is unclear, though I doubt you'll need them. I've prepared it in case I'm indisposed and unable to be here when he takes his medicines," Tom explained in a polite tone. Aria nodded, recognizing that Tom must have a considerable level of trust in her to entrust her with the responsibility of administering and monitoring Nathaniel's medication, given his protective nature towards him. It reinforced her decision to proceed with her plan to confide in him about her secret. Perhaps he could offer the most helpful advice on how to proceed. "Tom? I'm speaking to you," Nathaniel tried again. "I need to drop off something at Transcorp for John Davies," Tom replied, already heading to the door. "You need to drop off something for Julia's father." "And what might that be?" Nathaniel questioned with a narrow gaze. "Just some legal papers that require his signature," Tom replied as he pulled open the door. "You know I can tell when you're being evasive, right?" Nathaniel said, a tad irritated. "Of course," Tom replied. Nathaniel glared at him. "Please, Dr. Everly, make sure Nathaniel eats a substantial portion. It's essential for him to maintain his weight." Aria nodded, understanding Nathaniel's frustration with how the older man sometimes coddled him. Before Tom could walk through the door, Nathaniel called for his attention, causing the other man to pause his action. "Yes," Tom prompted. "My wedding to Julia is suspended until further notice," Nathaniel announced. A pregnant pause ensued. "Was that your decision, or hers?" Tom asked, and Aria detected a note of hesitancy in his tone. "Why does that matter?" Nathaniel replied with irritation. "So I know how serious this suspension is," Tom Hill replied. Nathaniel glared at him. "Ah, so it's her decision. I suppose the until further notice should be adjusted to 24 hours at most." "I will be back shortly, Nathaniel," Tom Hill said and left. The click of the door left a tense silence. Nathaniel stared at the door like a ticking bomb. So Tom thinks Julia has him wrapped around her fingers, that she can just do whatever she wants with no repercussions, Nathaniel thought to himself. Aria, watching Nathaniel seethe silently, knowing him and how impulsive and stubborn he could get, she decided to distract him before he made a decision they would all have to deal with. "I'm hungry," she said. Nathaniel blinked and redirected his dark gaze at her. Aria tried to ignore how her pulse raced at the intense stare. "Let's eat, please," she added. He gave her a curt nod. Removing his suit, he threw it on the coat hanger and walked to join her. Without pondering her options, Aria sat on the three-seater and tensed up when Nathaniel took the seat beside her. When she froze in place and made no move to open the lidded spread, Nathaniel looked at her with a raised eyebrow. "Well?" he prompted. Aria tried not to dwell on how closely he had positioned himself beside her, their thighs touching and the warmth of his body seeping through their clothes. His rich cologne filled the air, tempting her to bury her nose in his skin to inhale his scent. She swallowed softly and reached forward to begin uncovering the serving dishes. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Nathaniel's hand trembling as he attempted to reach for his plate. Quickly, she grabbed the plate and portioned small servings of food onto it, ensuring a balanced meal. Still holding the plate, she picked up a fork, skewering a slice of carrot, broccoli, and fish before offering it to Nathaniel. Their eyes locked. "You don't have to feed me, Aria," he rasped. "It's just more practical to use one plate to save water and soap," she replied. He raised an eyebrow. "So this is just being practical, saving water and soap?" he asked in a deep, low voice. She murmured in response, moving the food towards his lips. Still maintaining eye contact, Nathaniel slowly parted his lips, allowing her to feed him. Aria watched as his lips closed around the fork. When she withdrew it, his tongue darted to lick his upper lip in a slow, sexually stimulating manner that captivated her, taking her back to a peculiar memory of him doing just that after tasting her. "Aria?" Nathaniel rasped, snapping her out of her reverie. She mumbled, meeting his earnest gaze. "You need to be quicker if we're going to get any work done today," he said with a gentle smirk playing on his now moist lips. Aria swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes," she said in a voice barely above a whisper. Nathaniel couldn't help but notice the effect he was having on Aria. It had always been that way between them, a fiery passion and a palpable need for each other. Yet their clash in personalities remained a persistent issue. Her patience with him and the interactions with Julia only served to underscore her uniqueness, leaving Nathaniel feeling unsettled. Despite the circumstances that brought them together, she went out of her way to conceal his dependency on her, masking it with humor. This newfound realization stirred a fresh wave of emotions within Nathaniel, leaving him astonished by her ability to captivate him, both intellectually and physically, rendering him vulnerable and craving her approval and affection. Meanwhile, Aria continued to feed Nathaniel, attempting to ignore his penetrating gaze. Though it made her uneasy, she maintained a steady hand, a skill honed from her days as a surgeon. She wished she could decipher his thoughts, wondering if he was haunted by their shared past, as she often was. When she noticed a droplet of water at the corner of his mouth, she instinctively reached out to wipe it away, her thumb grazing his skin, eliciting a sharp intake of breath from Nathaniel. As he covered her hand with his own, a surge of warmth flooded through Aria, accompanied by a thrilling sensation that left her breathless. "You had a water spill," she began to explain in a hushed tone. "Yeah, thanks," he rasped, his hand still lingering on hers. Their eyes locked, revealing the longing they both felt. "Don't get attached now, Aria. Not now that I won't be here for long, darling." Nathaniel's voice cracked with emotion, tears threatening to surface. "Nathan, there's something I need to tell you," Aria replied, her voice trembling. Nathaniel furrowed his eyebrows, prompting her to continue. She stuttered, struggling to articulate her thoughts. The shrill ring of a phone shattered the moment, jolting them both back to reality. Aria withdrew her hand at once, her heart pounding in her chest as Nathaniel excused himself to answer the call. Her gaze followed him, lingering on his figure and settling on his beanie cap, a reminder of the changes he had undergone. "Tell him I will see him, and let security know he should be brought up to my office as soon as he gets here. I have a few samples of the promised product that I've already prepared, so I can show him that and give him a demonstration of its abilities," Nathaniel instructed, prompting Aria to begin clearing the table at the mention of someone joining them. However, Nathaniel gestured for her to stop, and she obediently resumed her seat. "I'm aware it hasn't been extensively tested, Tom. I'd rather we show him the stage we're on now than risk a lawsuit. It's business. We'll handle it as such. I promised him a product, and there was a delay. My health is a private matter, and I won't use it to garner sympathy." "It's the same, Tom." "I will see him," Nathaniel concluded the call before dialing another number. Pressing the intercom button, he instructed, "I'm expecting Mr. Charles Gray from Kim Pharmaceutical. Let him in as soon as he arrives." "Yes, sir," came the reply from a female voice at the other end. "Shall I bring him personally, sir?" "Is there anything else you need?" the lady asked. Aria couldn't be certain, but she thought she detected something suggestive in the female voice, piquing her interest. "Have Chloe lead him in, thanks, Ivy," Nathaniel replied, removing his finger from the intercom button. Irritated by the call from Tom, Nathaniel contemplated putting an end to Ivy's unprofessional behavior. Although he had found her antics amusing in the past, he now felt it was time to address the issue and perhaps transfer her to another department. "Sorry, I couldn't help but hear you're expecting someone. Do you still want me to stick around?" Aria interjected, interrupting his thoughts. "You've hardly eaten anything, Aria, and I haven't had my dessert." "Charles will take a while, so we have time. Besides, you can't leave my side, remember? My health wasn't made public, and I would appreciate a hand if you don't mind," Nathaniel replied. "Of course," Aria agreed as he joined her on the seat. Aria cut a slice of carrot cake onto a small sauce plate for Nathaniel and added more food to her own plate. When she hesitated to feed Nathaniel the cake, he nudged her gently, making her direct her attention to him. He beamed at her with a boyish grin. Aria smiled, reminiscing about her boys as she fed him before taking a bite of her own food. As she prepared to feed him the last piece, the door suddenly opened, and Nathaniel's blonde receptionist hurried in, carrying a smoothie cup. "Oh, sorry to interrupt, sir," she smiled brightly, though it was evident she wasn't sorry in the slightest. She puffed out her chest like she did earlier, reminiscent of university days with girls vying for Nathaniel's attention. Aria fought back a laugh at the absurdity of it all. The girl shot Aria an annoyed look, which quickly vanished as she turned her gaze to Nathaniel. "I made this organic smoothie, and I thought you might want to have a taste." Aria deliberately averted her gaze when Nathaniel fixed the girl with an incredulous stare, knowing she'd burst into laughter if she looked at her any longer. Nathaniel clenched his jaw, a surge of irritation coursing through him. He fought to maintain his composure, but the sight of Ivy's flirtatious demeanor grated on his nerves. Beneath his calm exterior, a mix of frustration and discomfort churned, fueled by memories of similar encounters from his past. Despite his efforts to conceal his emotions, a sharp edge crept into his voice as he addressed Ivy. masking his unease with a thinly veiled politeness. "Do you enjoy working here, Ivy?" Nathaniel enunciated in a chilly tone. Aye, of course. "Oh yes, boss. I'll get back to work," she stuttered, clearly embarrassed before hurrying off and gently closing the door behind her. "I'm glad my staff could provide you with entertainment," Nathaniel remarked, prompting Aria to laugh. "Sorry, but you have to admit that was something," Aria replied. "It certainly was something. I remember dreading scenes like that back in school, knowing full well you'd make me pay for it later," Nathaniel recalled. "You? Scared?" "I don't buy it for a second. I remember you reveling in the attention of my gender, always sporting that annoying smirk and playing the charming playboy," Aria jokingly retorted. "I wasn't acting, though. I am naturally charming," Nathaniel replied, his eyes twinkling and one eyebrow raised, looking rather adorable. Aria couldn't help but giggle. "Annoying is more like it. And having to witness those scenes was nauseating," Aria scoffed. "No, my dear, you were just jealous." "Admit it," Nathaniel teased. Aria gasped in denial and playfully swatted him on the chest, just like in old times. "You're full of it," Aria exclaimed. "I refuse to admit to such nonsense." Nathaniel chuckled. "You never did admit it. I always had to coax it out of you." "Remember, love?" His voice softened, tinged with emotion. "Yes, you always did," Aria replied, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of love and pain. "Look at us," Nathaniel rasped, lifting his hand to brush his knuckles against her cheek with a delicate touch, as if afraid to disrupt the fragile moment that had revealed their true feelings. Aria closed her eyes at his touch, feeling his warmth seep into her skin. Nathaniel felt an overwhelming urge to kiss her, but a gentle knock on the door interrupted the moment. Aria's eyelids fluttered open, and Nathaniel swallowed hard, his heart racing at what he had almost done. He tore his gaze away from her lips, knowing that crossing that line would change everything. Clearing his throat, he flashed her a smile. "I suppose that means Charles is here," Nathaniel remarked, his voice sounding deeper than before. "What do you want me to do?" Aria asked, still processing the unexpected moment she and Nathaniel had just shared, feeling like they had slipped back into a familiar camaraderie. His words echoed in her mind, noting how he had referred to her as his love, just as he used to. Did that mean he had forgiven her and still harbored feelings for her? Or was it merely habit? "Just stay close." "Thanks," Nathaniel rasped, rising from his seat. Aria couldn't help but notice that he had reverted to the formal tone he typically used when addressing her as Dr. Everly. Nathaniel raised his voice. "Come in," he called before taking a calming breath, feeling his hands tremble with nerves as he slipped them into his trouser pockets. Chloe cautiously peered into the room, receiving a nod of encouragement from Nathaniel before opening the door wider for Charles Gray to stride in, accompanied by a well-dressed man and woman. Nathaniel recalled the woman as his PA and the man as his attorney. Charles Gray had come prepared. "Hello, Mr. Hawthorne. You were beginning to worry me." The average-height man greeted him with a polite smile, approaching Nathaniel. "I know 50 million is an insignificant sum, especially for a business mogul like you, but it would bankrupt small fries like us," Charles Gray joked. Nathaniel chuckled. "Nonsense. I gave you my word." "I don't make a habit of reneging on promises, especially ones involving money," Nathaniel replied. "That's a relief. I can't afford to go toe-to-toe with Fitama Hawthorne in a legal battle," Charles responded, giving Nathaniel an astute stare. "There'll be no need for that as long as I'm still breathing," Nathaniel assured him. Noticing Charles Gray's glance at his beanie cap, Nathaniel added, with a sheepish grin, "Forgive the fashion statement, just a bad haircut. My punishment for daring to experiment." Charles Gray chuckled and waved it off dismissively. "Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne," Charles Gray's PA and lawyer greeted him. "Hello, please follow me," Nathaniel replied, motioning for them to accompany him to the lab and signaling for Aria to come along. "Oh, hello," Charles Gray said to Aria, pausing in his stride. "Good morning, Mr. Gray," Aria replied automatically. "I don't know." "I have a feeling we've met before. I just can't quite place you," Charles Gray remarked to Aria. Then turning to Nathaniel, he added, "Who is this beautiful gem, Hawthorne?" "Dr. Everly. She used to work alongside Dr. Rowan," Nathaniel said, not entirely pleased with Charles Gray's referring to Aria as a beautiful gem. "Oh, of course, Dr. Everly. My word, you look even more beautiful in person and younger. Forgive me, I'm in my 40s. Old age is catching up with me, Charles Grey joked, eliciting laughter from everyone except Nathaniel, who was growing increasingly irritated by Charles's attention towards Aria. His irritation only heightened when Charles reached out to hold Aria's hand. "Are you still working with Dr. Rowan, Dr. Everly?" Charles Grey inquired. "No. I run my own hospital now in Sylvan Ridge, Alaska," Aria replied automatically. "Oh, that's disappointing. I was hoping to poach you for the new hospital my company is building in New Jersey. But perhaps we could have you partner with us in some crucial cases," Charles suggested. Of course, Aria agreed, attempting to retract her hand from Charles's grasp. Nathaniel's glare intensified at the sight, stirring up a few not too pleasant memories. "Thank you," Charles Grey said to Aria before turning to his assistant. "This is Antoinette Black, my assistant, and that's Kevin Noah, my attorney." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Everly," Antoinette Black said. "Happy to make your acquaintance," Kevin Noah chimed in. "Thank you," Aria replied, accepting the business card from Antoinette Black. When asked for her own card, she hesitated. "I don't have one with me at the moment," Aria began, but Nathaniel intervened, offering his card to the lady, who accepted it cautiously, stealing a glance at her boss. "Hawthorne, this meeting is proving more fruitful than I had anticipated," Charles Grey remarked. "It seems your relationship with Dr. Everly is more than professional," he added, observing both Nathaniel and Aria. "Yes, it is." "Shall we?" Nathaniel replied, reaching for Aria's hand and intertwining their fingers, leading her towards the lab. "Aria, Dr. Everly will be assisting me with the product exhibition," Nathaniel announced over his shoulder. Aria couldn't help but feel Nathaniel's behavior was somewhat restrained. He disliked anyone touching her in any way, and although he refrained from violence this time, the tension was palpable. Aria exchanged an awkward glance with Charles Grey, attempting to muster a smile. "We attended the same university," she offered, trying to rationalize Nathaniel's demeanor. Knowing these people must be aware of his engagement to Julia Davies, Nathaniel was acting as if she belonged to him. "So you're friends?" Charles Grey inquired. Aria nodded, thinking close enough. When she met Nathaniel's gaze, he was glaring at her. It was such a familiar sight that she lowered her face to hide a smile, a hint of amusement tugging at the corners of her lips. Much later, after Nathaniel concluded his meeting with Charles Grey and assured him of starting production within 3 weeks, Nathaniel escorted Charles and his team to the elevator and eventually made his way back to his office. Once inside, he shut the door behind him and leaned against it, slowly sliding down to the floor, his breathing shallow and quick. Aria, who had been waiting by the laboratory door, hurried over to him and knelt beside him. "What's wrong?" she asked in a quiet voice filled with concern. "Nothing major. It's just that my lower limb bones feel like they're being crushed," he whispered through gritted teeth. Aria quickly retrieved the medication bag Tom had given her earlier and fetched his pills. Grabbing a bottle of water, she returned to him and shook the pills into her hand, helping him swallow them with water. Nathaniel swallowed hard and took deep breaths to distract himself from the pain. "Give it a minute," she said soothingly, noticing that his beanie cap had slipped, revealing his hair growing back after chemotherapy. Aria reached for the beanie cap to remove it, and Nathaniel held her gaze, breathing heavily. "I guess you're not buying the bad haircut excuse," Nathaniel rasped in a gruff tone. "I don't know why you bother to hide it. You still look handsome," Aria reassured him. "So you're admitting I'm handsome?" Nathaniel quipped. Aria laughed, rolling her eyes at him as he grunted, trying to contain the pain. Aria gently raised her hand to stroke his temple. "Just this once, let's agree on that," she whispered. "You wound me, Aria, making it sound like it's up for debate," Nathaniel teased, making Aria laugh. "You're so silly," she replied softly, gazing affectionately into his eyes. When her gaze lingered on his lips for more than a moment, Nathaniel felt the unmistakable pull of her desire to kiss him. Her voice had lowered, and her gaze softened, mirroring past moments when she was on the verge of kissing him. Yet he couldn't yield to it, knowing that doing so would make him lose control. Seeking a diversion, he racked his brain for a topic of conversation, and then it struck him that she had intended to confide something to him before Tom's phone call interrupted. "Earlier on, before I received that phone call, you were about to tell me something. What was it?" "Before you got the phone call?" Aria repeated, caught off guard by the question. Nathaniel nodded. I can't remember. It's She trailed off, unable to find a suitable replacement for her announcement about their children. When it comes back to me, I'll bring it up, she added with an awkward laugh. That's a first, you never forget things, Nathaniel replied, scrutinizing her closely. Not that I forgot what I wanted to say, it just slipped my mind is all, Aria said, looking away to avoid his gaze. Nathaniel gently cupped her jaw, forcing her to look at him. You know you can tell me anything, right? Anything at all, Aria. It's deception that I can't stand. You know that, right, baby? Nathaniel's voice took on an intense note, causing Aria's heart to constrict. She understood his point. It was one of the main reasons he had walked away in the past, but she also couldn't help feeling it was partly his fault for not seeing her back then. She'd cringed at the very thought of scribbling her news on a piece of paper, and when she resolved to send him a text, she never received a reply. She had waited and hoped he would find her, but he never did. Eventually, she turned her pain into anger and forcefully closed the door on that chapter of her life, convinced that if he didn't want anything to do with her, she wouldn't force him. Nathaniel observed the emotions playing out in her now moistened eyes, realizing she did remember what she wanted to tell him. She just didn't know how to tell him. And if the information was affecting her like that, then he was right to suspect she was keeping something from him. Tell me, he commanded, grabbing her face in his hands and drawing her close. Tell me, Aria, he growled. Aria released a shaky breath. Nathaniel braced himself for news that would likely break his heart. Why didn't you agree to see me? Back then, why didn't you agree to see me, Nathan? I came looking for you thrice. I sent you a text. I waited, you never replied, Aria asked, her voice shaky with emotions. I didn't see any text. I stopped using that line as soon as I got home, Nathaniel replied, his tone almost a growl. Really? Aria said skeptically. I had to, he added in an aching whisper. The last thing I wanted was to drunk text a woman who is ashamed of me. Tears blurred Aria's eyes at his reply. That isn't true, baby, she replied in an aching whisper. Why are we talking about this right now? Nathaniel inquired, wanting to redirect the conversation back to what Aria wanted to tell him. The last thing he wanted to discuss was the lowest period of his life when he had felt like nothing and lost interest in everything, including living. And definitely not with the woman who was responsible for that. What was it you wanted to tell me, Aria? He demanded. A knock on the door vibrated against his back. He let out a curse through gritted teeth. Aria withdrew from him and hurried to his restroom. Locking the door behind her, she covered her face and cried quietly, her shoulders shaking with renewed pain. Meanwhile, Nathaniel got up. The pain in his legs had subsided, but he was angry at the incessant interruption. He pulled the door open and said through gritted teeth, "This had better be good." Ivy startled backward with widened eyes. "Sorry, sir, she stuttered. "Out with it," Nathaniel snapped, his patience wearing thin. Ivy looked close to tears now. "We just received a phone call from the hospital. It looks like Mr. Tom Hill was in an accident," she replied. "What?" Nathaniel breathed in utter shock. "What accident? I just spoke with him not too long ago. What hospital?" "Evergreen Memorial Hospital, sir," Ivy replied. Nathaniel closed the door, causing Ivy to flinch. He hurried to his desk, picked up his phone, and dialed Tom's number. It rang and rang, no one picked up. "Don't you fucking die on me, old man," Nathaniel murmured to himself, his heart picking up speed with fear. "What's wrong?" Aria asked, watching as Nathaniel quickly grabbed things from his desk. He raised his eyes, and his heart constricted at how red and puffy her eyes were now. "Tom was in an accident," Nathaniel replied. Aria's eyes widened in surprise. "Which hospital is he in?" Aria asked. "Your old hospital," Nathaniel replied. "Oh," Aria replied. With their personal troubles momentarily set aside, the two hurried to the hospital. As they entered the reception of the prestigious facility, almost everyone stopped to stare, but for different reasons. "Dr. Everly," one nurse exclaimed in shock, followed by others rushing to encircle her, bombarding her with questions. "Are you coming back to work here, Aria?" One voice resounded. "My God, you look exactly the same," another voice exclaimed. "We've missed you terribly." Another voice chimed in excitedly. "Wait till Dr. Rowan sees you. He will freak out, although it would only appear as a disgruntled grunt. He hated that you left." Another voice added, "We all hated that you left." Another interjected, "Ladies, thank you so much for this celebrity reception, but I'm here for Tom Hill. He was in an accident and was brought here," Aria quickly interjected. "Oh, Tom Hill, Mr. Hawthorne's lawyer," a nurse replied. "Yes, is he alive?" Nathaniel asked, causing everyone to turn and gape at him in disbelief. Silence filled the room momentarily. "It's Nathaniel Hawthorne," someone whispered in awe. "So? Where is he?" Nathaniel demanded forcefully. "He's in the recovery ward with Dr. Rowan." The nurse began explaining. "Take me to him," Nathaniel interrupted, turning away and striding down the wide hallway. It took a moment before the nurse rushed after him, leading the way. "Dr. Everly, are you coming?" Nathaniel called over his shoulder. "Yes, of course," Aria replied, excusing herself from the nurses and hurrying after Nathaniel. "Can you please discharge me right now? I promise I will go straight home and rest." Tom Hill's voice filtered through the closed door of his room to the hallway. Nathaniel sighed in relief, reassured that the older man wasn't in critical condition. The nurse ahead of him knocked at the door before pushing it open. "Dr. Rowan, Mr. Hawthorne is here," the nurse announced, and Nathaniel stepped inside. The tall doctor turned toward the door and their eyes met. "Dr. Rowan," Nathaniel greeted simply. "Good afternoon, Mr. Hawthorne," Dr. Rowan replied. Nathaniel nodded in acknowledgement before turning his attention to Tom Hill, who had a bandage wrapped around his head and left arm. "Come on, I specifically told them not to tell you," Tom Hill complained, glaring at Dr. Rowan. "He's the only one who can make you see reason, so sorry," Dr. Rowan replied in his deep voice. "Whatever they say you must do, you have to do it. I can't afford you breaking down now." Nathaniel retorted, holding back the obvious phrase of, "I need you," but the message was clear as Tom met his gaze. The older man sighed and rested back on the bed. Dr. Rowan chuckled. Aria, standing by the door unnoticed, waved to Tom, and the older man flashed her a smile. "Well, at least I know I'm in good hands. I see you brought Dr. Everly," Tom Hill quipped, prompting Dr. Rowan jerked his gaze at the door, freezing in shock, his mouth open, and his eyes widened in surprise. "Hey, Sebastian," Aria greeted, her voice soft. Nathaniel clenched his jaw at the tone. "Good God, look at you!" Dr. Rowan exclaimed, rushing towards her to pull her into a hug. "What are you doing here?" he asked, smiling down at her. "She's with me," Nathaniel interjected before Aria could respond. As the excitement faded from Dr. Sebastian Rowan's face, Aria sensed a peculiar tension in the room. "Yes, I came with Nathaniel Hawthorne to see Tom. What's his prognosis?" Aria lightened the mood, breaking the awkward silence. The car he was in was hit head-on by another car. Luckily, it wasn't a direct impact on his side of the car. The impact caused him to hit his head on the side window, and he used his left arm to break the glass to get out, so he had scratches and a dislocated shoulder joint. "I was in the emergency room when he was brought in and took charge. But he's fine. The head scan showed just slight swelling, and he doesn't seem to have a concussion, so he just needs rest. But we want him to stay the night for observation, just in case," Dr. Rowan explained. "It's settled then. He's staying," Nathaniel declared. "What about the driver?" Aria asked with concern. "I'm afraid he's worse. Dr. Ryder has him. He was brought in unconscious with a cut to the stomach, so we had to operate," Dr. Rowan replied. Nathaniel felt terrible. In his haste to get to Tom, he had completely forgotten about the driver. "Who else did you take with you?" Nathaniel asked Tom. "It was just me and Roland, thankfully," Tom Hill replied. "Where did this happen?" "How?" Nathaniel questioned, befuddled. Julia's father's office building was just about 6 blocks away from his, and the streets were quite busy. How did such an accident happen? At such a busy period? Tom shrugged, immediately regretting it as pain shot through him. He grunted and Nathaniel frowned. "I'm fine," Tom quickly reassured him, knowing he had a good answer to that question, but it would be a bad idea to let Nathaniel in on it just yet. He prayed that Roland would pull through. None of it would have happened if he hadn't done what he did. But he needed to protect Nathaniel, even from himself. He shook his head sharply when he started to feel drowsy, but it was no use. He sighed. "What's happening to him?" Nathaniel asked, watching Tom's eyelids slowly close. "I gave him a sedative to help him relax and sleep." "We should excuse him," Dr. Rowan explained. Nathaniel nodded and walked closer to the side of the bed to place a hand on Tom's chest. The two held each other's gaze. "I'm fine, I promise," Tom said to Nathaniel's silent, worried stare. Nathaniel nodded, turned and headed to the exit, walking past Dr. Rowan. As he reached for Aria's hand, Tom said, "Dr. Everly, a minute, please." Nathaniel exchanged a glance with Aria before looking back at Tom, wondering what he wanted. He left anyway, and Dr. Rowan followed him outside. Aria approached the hospital bed and gave Tom a smile. "You don't need to worry about him. I will take care of him for you," she said, assuming Tom had called her back to ask her to take care of Nathaniel. "Oh, I know you will. If you go through the diary I gave you, you'll see his diet list and food schedule. We make sure he eats well to keep him looking as healthy as possible," Tom said. "I noticed. Thank you for that." "Thank you for taking care of him," Aria said emotionally, giving Tom a warm smile. "I know he's in good hands, so that wasn't why I asked you to stay back," Tom said. "Why did you ask me to stay back?" Aria asked, furrowing her brows. For a brief moment, an irrational fear seized her, causing her heart to race as the possibility that Tom had discovered her secret gnawed at her. She quickly pushed aside the fear, reasoning that if he had indeed found out, he would have asked Nathaniel to stay behind, not her. But then, could he possibly want to warn her first or confront her? She dismissed that notion as well. After all, she was practically a stranger to Tom and he had no obligation towards her. So asking her to stay back to alert her of his discoveries didn't quite add up. Then why had he asked her to stay behind? Tom held her gaze for a moment, desperately hoping he was right about Dr. Everly being a decent human being and that she wouldn't betray Nathaniel. "Why did you break up with him?" Tom asked Aria, giving her a searching gaze, employing his lifelong interrogative lawyer skills to detect any form of deceit. Aria sighed. "I didn't actually," she replied with a nervous laugh, attempting to downplay the significance of his question. She knew she couldn't tell the older man to go to hell and mind his own damn business, but as a parent, she somewhat understood his concerns, knowing how Tom acted as if Nathaniel were his own child. "He broke up with you?" Tom repeated in surprise, shaking his head sharply to ward off the effects of the sedative. "Stop, it's only for your own good. You need to rest," Aria replied with a chuckle, watching him struggle to keep his eyes open. "What did you do to him?" Tom asked, opening his eyes to meet hers. "I made a mistake. I misjudged him, and he realized it and was hurt. I tried to fix things to see him, but he was angry with me," Aria explained as best she could. "Ah, that explains his withdrawal," Tom murmured. Aria frowned, leaning closer to hear him better. "What withdrawal? Did you say withdrawal?" Aria questioned intently, wanting to know if Nathaniel was as devastated as she had felt after their breakup. "I don't think I have much time to fight this thing," Tom grumbled, adding, "Could you please reach under my pillow?" "Under your pillow?" Aria repeated, not quite sure if she heard correctly. Tom was muttering to himself, and Aria had to strain to hear him properly. "Yes, please," Tom replied. "Okay," Aria said as she carefully reached under Tom's pillow and pulled out a folder tucked into a transparent jacket smeared with blood. Her eyebrows furrowed. "Keep that safe for me," Tom said, shutting his eyes. Aria stood there for a moment, unsure of how to react, but upon hearing approaching footsteps, she quickly reached behind her to tuck the file into the band of her trousers, covering it with her top. "Dr. Everly," Nathaniel called from the door, but before he could step inside, she rushed to meet him. Nathaniel held her gaze. "He's sleeping now," Aria quickly said, flashing him a smile. "What does he want?" Nathaniel asked, giving her a keen scrutiny. He wanted me to read the diary he gave me earlier to familiarize myself with your diet," Aria replied, relieved to have a believable answer this time. "Of course," Nathaniel scoffed. "He never learns." He grumbled as he turned away. Aria followed him and quietly shut the door behind her. She noticed that Dr. Sebastian Rowan wasn't in the hallway anymore and said, "I thought Dr. Rowan was keeping you company. Drop the pretense, Aria. There's no need to be formal with him on my behalf. I heard you call him Sebastian earlier." "I am neither blind nor deaf," Nathaniel replied, making Aria frown. She wondered why Nathaniel sounded almost angry at her inquiry. "Am I missing something?" Aria asked, giving him a searching gaze. "Like what, Aria?" Nathaniel said. Aria's frown deepened. Nathaniel's phone rang and he immediately answered it. "He's on the first floor, in room 1. Pick 6 men to come over and take turns guarding his door now," Nathaniel ordered. Aria watched him, wondering if Tom was in some kind of danger and just what was in the folder he gave her. Most importantly, why hadn't he entrusted it to Nathaniel? Nathaniel couldn't shake the gut feeling that Tom was keeping something from him. He hoped Tom would trust him with whatever it was before it became too late. He recalled Tom mentioning his meeting with Julia's father and wondered about its outcome. John Davies wasn't known for violence, but Nathaniel couldn't shake his suspicion. He remembered Davies initially opposing his leadership, but changing his mind at the last minute, likely influenced by Julia. Tom had openly disapproved of Julia's and Nathaniel's relationship, and now that Julia had broken their engagement, Nathaniel couldn't help but wonder if the Davies blamed Tom for it. He brushed his hands over his face, thinking he might be overly paranoid, but he was tired of people treating him like he would fall apart if they just told him what was happening. Seeing Aria's former colleague and friend, Dr. Rowan didn't improve his mood. He remembered the first time Aria introduced the doctor to him, innocently referring to Nathaniel as her boyfriend. Nathaniel had noticed the doctor's instant body language, though Aria seemed oblivious. He had disliked their friendship from then on, especially when he noticed the doctor subtly touching her during conversations. Although he never confronted the doctor directly due to Aria's likely reaction, he had made it clear that no one messed with what was his. After he and Aria broke up, he avoided both the doctor and the hospital altogether. Why do you want Tom guarded? Is he in danger? Aria asked, pulling him out of his thoughts. I'm just taking precautions, he replied. Aria nodded in understanding. It's been quite an eventful day, Aria said with a sigh. Do you want to go home? Nathaniel asked. Oh no, I'm just saying. She started to reply, then added, We have to get food into you soon. He nodded. I want to wait for my men to get here, then we can leave. How about we eat out? A treat for making your first day this adventurous, Nathaniel suggested. Aria chuckled. Thank you, but we have to stick to your diet, she replied. Don't worry, I think I have enough reputation around here to make any chef accept special requests, Nathaniel reassured her. Aria chuckled again. Okay then, she replied. Nathaniel made a call as they settled on a hall bench outside Tom's room. When Nathaniel coughed twice while speaking on the phone, Aria whispered, I'm going to go grab us some water, and hurried away before Nathaniel could stop her. He felt compelled to follow her, much like he had attempted to do the first time she tried to leave him, only to end up in fits of bloody coughing. He remembered how she had made him drink water first. He assumed she had left to get water for his sake, just in case, unlike his imagined scenario of her using the water as an excuse to go and secretly meet with her very proper Dr. Rowan. Mr. Hawthorne, the voice at the other end of the line jolted his attention. He had momentarily forgotten he was in the middle of making a dinner request. He cleared his throat in an attempt to contain the urge to cough before saying, Yes, I'm listening. His voice sounded hoarse and gruff. Despite getting stopped in almost every hallway she walked through by her old colleagues for a welcoming chat, Aria managed to reach the cafeteria in less than 5 minutes. The hospital cafeteria staff also gave her an elaborate welcome reception, and even refused to accept payment for the 2 bottled waters she picked. Thanking them, her eyes settled on the hospital's renowned avocado and turkey sandwiches, known for their nutritious ingredients and wholesome flavor, and she ordered 2. One of the staff quickly wrapped them up in paper napkins, handing them over to her. Aria dropped the exact change for the sandwiches and dashed off, laughter trailing behind her. She made it past 2 hallways before she ran into Dr. Rowan. He smiled when he saw her carrying 2 sandwiches. I see you are still hooked on that abomination, Dr. Rowan said. Aria laughed. You must agree it's healthy, though, Aria replied. That it is, he said, pausing to peer into her eyes. Aria gave him a warm smile. How are you? He asked. I'm fine, Aria replied. No regrets? Dr. Rowan probed. Aria shook her head. Her face still brightened with a smile, but then it gradually eased off, and she let out a regretful sigh. I suppose I have one. If I was given a chance to live it all over again, I would only change one single thing, Aria said. Just one, Dr. Rowan repeated with a raised eyebrow. Aria chuckled and tilted her head to one side, contemplating her answer. Okay, maybe 2, she amended, thinking of everything she would have given to not have separated from Nathaniel, and for him not to be suffering from cancer. Regardless, I am happy with where my life is at right now, Aria said. Dr. Rowan nodded. That's all I need to hear, that you are happy and content. Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters, Dr. Rowan said. Aria nodded. So I suppose now that you are back, and with Mr. Hawthorne, it means you would be taking over your post as the hospital's chief? Dr. Rowan asked, Aria's eyebrows pulled together in a frown. My role as what? Aria repeated in a low, quiet tone, not quite sure that she heard right. Hawthorne asked me to be your interim, but you know how I hate administrative duties. So if you are back, I would appreciate it if you... He continued and stopped when he saw Aria staring at him with her mouth open. Oh shit, he cursed under his breath. You didn't know, did you? Dr. Rowan asked. Know what? Aria replied, filled with a sense of awe and disbelief. Dr. Rowan took a minute to study her face before reaching for her hand, to shepherd her to the hallway leading to the hospital's chief surgeon's office. They paused at the door and Dr. Rowan showed Aria the tag on the door. It read, Interim Chief Surgeon, Dr. S. Rowan. Aria swallowed hard. Dr. Rowan ushered her inside the expansive office that looked different from the last time Dr. Arun Kuwait had occupied it. It looked far more sophisticated and luxurious, more like Nathaniel's office. Dr. Rowan took out a file and gestured for her to come closer. Aria was almost afraid to. She managed to make herself move to stand close enough to lower her gaze to the opened file, and in bold letters, Aria saw the name of the owner of the hospital written as Dr. Aria Everly. She swallowed hard. Nathaniel bought this hospital, she breathed. Officially you did, Aria, Dr. Rowan replied. I'm sorry I didn't know he hadn't told you yet, he added. Aria nodded jerkily and slowly turned to head out, feeling her insides frozen in shock. Aria? Dr. Rowan called, making her stop to look back. It would be nice to have you come back here, though, he said, smiling. Aria nodded. Please don't let him know I told you, he said with a sheepish smile. Aria automatically nodded and left. She found her way back to the first floor where Nathaniel was still sitting on the bench she had left him. He searched her gaze as she approached him, noticing the somewhat distant look in her eyes. Here, Aria handed him a bottle of water along with one of the avocado and turkey sandwiches. I got it from the cafeteria. It's the best. Try it, she said automatically. Nathaniel nodded and accepted it as Aria settled down beside him. Unwrapping the sandwich, he brought it to his nose to savor the aroma of fresh avocado and turkey mingled with crisp vegetables before taking a tentative bite. As he chewed slowly, he savored the delightful combination of flavors, finding the avocado creamy, the turkey tender, and the vegetables adding a refreshing crunch to each bite. He caught Aria looking at him and paused to hold her gaze. How is it? She asked, her voice a tad different, although he couldn't quite be sure how. There was a hesitant softness to it that piqued his interest. It's not bad, he replied. She pressed her lips together in a semblance of a smile and bit into hers. I always opt for one of these when I need a late-night snack, trusting in its nutritious blend of avocado, turkey, and vegetables, which I find beneficial for my metabolism, Aria explained. Nathaniel nodded, watching her keenly, trying to figure out what had happened to make her this way between the time she left for the cafeteria and returned. It struck him then, his eyes gleamed with sudden epiphany. He continued to search her face as she spoke, telling him nonsensical things she wouldn't normally speak about. You know, don't you? Nathaniel said in a low, quiet tone. What? Aria said, leaning closer to hear him. He told you. That's why you're this emotional wreck, he affirmed. I have no idea, Aria started to say. Don't you dare lie to me. I have had enough of people tiptoeing around me, hiding things from me, as if I'm some dim-witted weakling that they can manipulate and deceive with lies and secrets. Nathaniel growled passionately, his voice low, deep, and almost guttural. He thought I knew, Aria replied, her earnest whisper somewhat appeasing. Nathaniel settled back and continued to eat his sandwiches. Nathan, she called softly. He threw a side glance at her with a raised eyebrow. You bought me a hospital, and even after we... She paused, unable to say the term breakup, and instead said, after we separated, you kept the status as it was. Why? Her voice barely above a whisper. It was yours. I bought it for you, and that was that, Nathaniel replied. Nathan, you make it sound like you just walked into a shoe shop and bought me a pair of shoes. You bought a hospital worth millions, she said. It's billions, actually, he replied in a casual tone. Aria gave him a searching gaze. Why Nathan? Baby, why? She asked, her voice filled with emotion. I was that committed is all. There's nothing to it, he replied offhandedly. Aria's heart shook at the revelation, making her feel worse than she did after he left her, realizing that when he had said he loved her, he'd meant it. Nathan, I'm so sorry, Aria whispered. I told you it's nothing, he said coldly, looking away from her. Yes, he had bought the hospital, but it wasn't only as a gift and a show of commitment to making her happy, but also out of jealousy and the need to let Dr. Rowan know that he was never giving Aria up for anyone, not even for Rowan, who was a renowned surgeon. He had chosen to further his studies to be impactful, just as Rowan had. He wanted to prove that, professionally, he was as competent and had bought the hospital to show Rowan that he was far beneath him to be pursuing his woman. But then he had lost her regardless. Aria had no idea the blow she had dealt him. Thankfully, Andrew appeared at the end of the hallway, followed by 7 of his men. He let out a sigh of relief and got up, cleaning his hand with the paper napkin used to wrap the sandwiches. We can leave now, Dr. Everly, he rasped, deliberately adopting his formal tone to distance himself from her emotionally. But Aria knew. Nathaniel strode slightly ahead of Aria, flanked by Andrew and Charles. Aria was still in a daze, pondering the enormity of Nathaniel's actions. She struggled to comprehend the depth of his commitment, especially considering she had once dismissed their relationship as a mere fling. The exact term she had flung at him flashed in her head, and she visibly cringed. Damn it! She cursed silently. As they moved through the hospital corridors, every staff member they passed acknowledged Nathaniel with a show of respect. It struck Aria as unusual, knowing that hospital personnel often held a disdain for pharmaceutical companies like Nathaniel's. Many understood the unethical practices rampant in the industry, where sales agents prioritized profits over patient well-being, often resorting to bribery to push their overpriced products through doctors. Yet, Farmer Hawthorne stood apart as a beacon of integrity in the pharmaceutical world, renowned for its dedication to providing affordable medication to all. Aria couldn't help but wonder if Nathaniel's reputation among the hospital staff stemmed from this noble mission, or simply because they were aware that he was, by extension, the owner of the hospital itself. Exiting the hospital, Aria watched as additional bodyguards flanked Nathaniel and herself. It used to unsettle her, but now she understood his significance. Nathaniel's driver swiftly moved to open the back door, and as Nathaniel reached the car ahead of her, he paused, waiting for her to join him. Hurrying her steps, Aria slipped into the car before Nathaniel could offer assistance. She visibly recoiled from any contact, fearing he might inadvertently touch the folder tucked beneath her top. Nathaniel, noticing her avoidance of physical contact, clenched his fists, suppressing his frustration. He waited until she was settled before closing the door. Initially considering sitting with her in the back, he changed his mind and instead occupied the front passenger seat, leaving the driver momentarily flustered before taking his place behind the wheel. Starting the engine, the driver inquired, "Where to, sir?" Nathaniel hesitated before replying, briefly contemplating cancelling dinner altogether, but ultimately deciding against it. La Belle Epoque Bistro on 5th Avenue. He murmured. Resting his head against the headrest, he took a calming breath. From the back seat, Aria studied Nathaniel's reflection from the side mirror, wondering if he remained perturbed by Sebastian's disclosure about the hospital ownership, or if it was their revisitation of the past that was still upsetting him. Settling into her seat, she wrapped her arms around herself, feeling alone. She pondered why Nathaniel hadn't instructed the driver to return straight to his mansion, thinking that if he disliked her bringing up the past, he would likely resent being reminded by the restaurant staff who might remember their previous visits. As the jeep navigated the increasingly dimming streets, Aria watched the bustling cityscape through the side window. The day had taken a toll on her both mentally and emotionally, and she wished she could retreat to her new apartment with her boys and revel in their comforting hugs. Thoughts of Liam and Owen brought a subtle smile to her lips. They were the silver lining to her darkest moments. Their innocent remarks and sibling banter never failed to lift her spirits. Owen's playful concern and Liam's steadfast support were constants she cherished deeply. Despite seeing them that morning, she felt a pang of sadness knowing she wouldn't be with them that night. Nathaniel stole a glance at the side mirror and caught sight of Aria's face, adorned with a soft, warm smile. Curious, he shifted his gaze to the sidewalk, hoping to discern the source of her happy mood. His eyes settled on a young boy accompanied by his mother and a dog, and he surmised that must have elicited her smile. Watching the boy, a wave of regret washed over him, causing him to swallow hard before tearing his gaze away as the jeep accelerated, leaving the scene behind. Redirecting his attention to Aria's reflection in the mirror, he couldn't help but wonder what their hypothetical son or daughter would look like. He envisioned a boy with his features and a daughter with her mother's undeniable charm, big brown eyes, and a smile that could melt any heart. He took a shaky breath, acknowledging the impossibility of such a dream coming true, given his circumstances. Aria met Nathaniel's gaze in the mirror, her heart clenching at the depth of emotion she detected in his eyes, pain and longing intertwining to create a heart-rending sight. He averted his gaze and, as Aria leaned forward, she caught sight of a solitary tear glistening on his cheek before he swiftly wiped it away. She instinctively reached out, wanting to comfort him, wanting to reassure him that everything would be all right. Before she could act, however, the jeep came to a halt, jolting her back to reality. She realized they had arrived at the restaurant. Nathaniel alighted briskly. The driver imitated the act. With heart pounding, Aria hurriedly retrieved the file tucked behind her and discreetly slipped it under the mat behind the driver's seat before Nathaniel could open the back door for her. Without meeting her eyes, he simply said, "Shall we?" Aria couldn't help but notice his lack of offer to assist her. One hand held the door open while the other remained tucked in his pocket. "Thank you," she replied, smiling as she exited the car. Feigning a stumble, Nathaniel instinctively grasped her waist to steady her. Aria smiled up at him and exclaimed, "Oops," before giving him a sheepish grin. Nathaniel narrowed his gaze, sensing her deliberate ploy. Though she felt a bit foolish, she couldn't deny the satisfaction of momentarily disrupting his aloof demeanor. Nathaniel's heart initially leaped with fear as he witnessed Aria's near fall, but as the soft touch of her body against his started to register, a more intense sensation surged through him. Despite being in front of the establishment, likely under the watchful gaze of onlookers from the top floor, Nathaniel took his time before stepping back from Aria. He relished the exhilarating rush she always managed to evoke in him and savored the way the world around them faded into insignificance whenever she gazed adoringly into his eyes. He, mentally, prepared to distance himself emotionally from her and erase the moment from his mind, but Aria didn't let him. Walking towards the entrance, he felt her hand lightly brush against his in a familiar gesture that brought an irrepressible smile to his lips. Glancing in her direction, he saw Aria looking ahead with a stoic expression on her face. Nonetheless, he studied her profile with a tender intensity. Then, as he turned his focus forward, Aria's hand slowly found its way into his. His heart swelled with emotion, prompting him to intertwine his fingers with hers, holding her hand firmly as he brushed his thumb against hers. "Good evening, Mr. Hawthorne. Dr. Everly, it's nice to have you back." The establishment host greeted them with a polite smile. "Hello, Mr. Aaron," Aria replied, returning the smile. Nathaniel simply mumbled in response. "Will you be occupying your usual table?" the man asked, glancing down at their intertwined fingers. Suddenly feeling self-conscious, Aria remembered that Nathaniel was supposed to be officially engaged to Julia Davies. She couldn't help but wonder if Nathaniel had brought his fiancée to the same restaurant. With this thought in mind, she attempted to retrieve her hand from Nathaniel's grasp, but he didn't let her. "Yes, please," Nathaniel replied, his tone decisive. The host's face lit up with delight as if he had just received wonderful news. "Follow me, please," he said, turning to lead them through a private hallway to an exclusive dining rooftop reserved solely for them. Aria and Nathaniel were enveloped in nostalgia as they stepped out of the elevator onto the open-floor dining area. 5 tables adorned the space, but they were all vacant, except for one nestled in a corner shielded by exotic flowers and set for 2. An ice bucket gleamed at the table's center, ready for use. Rectangular-shaped patio heaters were strategically positioned near each table to keep the chill at bay. Aria couldn't resist stealing a glance at Nathaniel, recalling why they had chosen this particular corner. The flowers, encased in long white glass cases, gave the illusion of an underwater scene, providing a sense of privacy, and had once served as a shield, allowing them the freedom to indulge in various activities. Nathaniel's daring nature had often led to moments that now caused Aria's cheeks to flush with embarrassment. "I will let the chef know you are here," Mr. Aaron said before hurrying away. Nathaniel gestured for Aria to take a seat, holding her hand up with gentlemanly grace as she settled onto the long back couch. After she had settled in, he released her hand to take his own seat opposite her. Aria felt a tad strange now that Nathaniel was no longer holding her hand. Despite this, she could still sense the lingering warmth of his touch. Gently placing her hand on her lap under the table, she tried to banish the memory of his warm touch, but it was hard, especially when he was looking at her with an unwavering gaze. "It's surprising that this place hasn't changed much. I don't know what I was expecting, but I figured they would have done some upgrades." "It still looks good nonetheless," Nathaniel remarked, settling back and resting his arm on a throw pillow. "I didn't know it was this close to your parents' house," Aria said. Nathaniel searched her gaze, his expression curious. "Why did you say that?" he inquired, his gaze probing. "Nothing. I'm just making an observation. I just thought it was funny we used to come here a lot back then, and you never mentioned that your parents' house was close by," Aria replied, feeling a twinge of surprise at her own words. Shit, she cursed in her head. "Okay, I think I'm going to need a therapist because..." "What? My God," she quietly agonized. She couldn't quite discern where the thought had come from. It had slipped out before she could analyze her motives. Angry with herself for voicing such an intrusive thought aloud, she realized that if Nathaniel probed deeper, he would detect her past suspicions and insecurities, potentially ruining the day further. "Do you want the sugar-coated answer or Nathaniel Hawthorne's answer?" Nathaniel queried, feeling a sense of familiarity in this exchange, as if he were slipping back into his old self. He could sense that, despite their 4-year separation, she was still searching for flaws in his supposed love for her. "I'm so sorry, I don't know where that came from." "Please don't respond to that." "Forget I said anything," Aria replied, feeling mortified as she realized he had caught on to her underlying thoughts. "It didn't occur to me to take you to my parents' house because it held no significance to me. Taking you there when they're home would entail certain restrictions, and I wasn't prepared to take you to a place, or any place for that matter, where I wouldn't be able to sleep next to you. It's quite simple, Aria. I just wanted you to myself, no restrictions." "I hope that answers your question," he explained. Aria nodded, unable to meet his gaze. "Is there anything else you'd like to get off your chest?" Nathaniel inquired. Aria groaned and covered her face with her hands. "Can we reset, please? Like rewind and start over. I don't understand what came over me." "I'm so ashamed right now," Aria said, hearing Nathaniel chuckle. She peered at him through a space between her fingers and saw him smiling lazily at her. "It's okay, I understand we still have hangovers from our past. Let's just try to end this evening on a light note, huh?" Nathaniel replied, surprising her. She slowly lowered her hands, giving him a keen scrutiny. "Don't look so surprised, baby, I'm 28. I like to think I'm not that boy anymore. Especially knowing tomorrow is not promised for me," he husked. Aria felt her eyes fill with tears and quickly looked away. "Yes, I noticed you are pretty old now," Aria said, making him laugh. "You silly girl," Nathaniel muttered fondly. Aria giggled. And that set the tone for the rest of their dinner. Aaron returned with the chef and servers, swiftly lining their table with Nathaniel's order. Although Nathaniel requested only water and Pierre Chavin 0 Rose Gold to accompany his special diet, the chef added Domaine de la Romanée Conti Grand Cru, a prestigious red wine, the best of its kind. "This is on the house for letting us be part of your love story, Dr. Everly," the chef graciously offered, unaware of the true situation. Aria, not wanting to escalate the situation by correcting his assumption, thanked him and allowed the chef to open the wine and pour some for her. However, when he tried to pour for Nathaniel, he swiftly collected the bottle from him. "Thank you, I'll take it from here," Nathaniel said. Aaron and the chef beamed with smiles before departing with the servers. Nathaniel gently placed the wine bottle down and poured himself some fruit wine. When he saw Aria swiftly consuming the wine the chef had poured into her cup, he decided to tease her. With their eyes locked, he said, "That thing contains approximately 14% alcohol. If you get intoxicated and start making advances, I won't be playing the role of the good guy, my love." Aria swallowed hard and slowly lowered the glass cup. Nathaniel continued to hold her gaze, and Aria sensed he was recalling every instance she had become intoxicated and lost control with him. His eyes darkened, and his intense gaze, coupled with his trademark smirk, stirred up more emotions than any alcohol ever did. "Well, I only indulged when I was with you, Alexander, and Ethan," she remarked, her voice adopting a sultry undertone. "I know. We were pretty terrible influences," Nathaniel admitted unabashedly. Aria giggled. "May I pour this for you instead?" he asked, gesturing to the fruit wine he originally ordered. "It's a premium non-alcoholic sparkling wine made from grapes with a blend of red fruit flavors, offering a luxurious experience without the alcohol content," Nathaniel explained. Aria nodded and cleared her throat before replying, "Yes, please. Thanks." "Did you keep in touch with them, Ethan and Alexander?" Aria asked. "Yes," Nathaniel replied. "I heard Ethan is in Dubai." "Yes, he is. One of my father's contacts over there needed a pharmaceutical scientist, and I recommended him and Alexander. They hired them both," Nathaniel said. "Oh, I didn't know Alexander was also in Dubai," Aria said. "No, Alexander is in Nigeria, heading one of the country's biggest pharmaceutical companies over there. Same contact," Nathaniel explained. "Or? When was the last time you guys saw each other?" Aria asked. "About a year ago. We were supposed to meet up in Dubai, but I lost my parents, and after that I found out that I was sick." "So?" Nathaniel said and took a sip of his drink. "I'm so sorry, Nathan," Aria said in a whisper. Nathaniel nodded with his lips pressed together in a semblance of a smile. "They flew in for the burial. They both wanted to stick around, but I didn't let them. I couldn't let them pause their lives for me. That's also one of the reasons why I didn't make my condition public. I just don't want them quitting their lives for me," Nathaniel said. "They will be mad at you when they find out," Aria said with a warm smile, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, I won't be around to face their wrath, will I?" he joked, locking eyes with her. Aria's eyes welled up once more. "Don't be too certain of that, Nathan. Perhaps I have a trick up my sleeve to ensure you stick around and face their anger," Aria said in a trembling voice. "So do you dabble in witchcraft too, Dr. Everly?" Nathaniel quipped. "Maybe," she replied. He chuckled. Nathaniel was surprisingly enjoying their time together. He felt thankful for not cancelling the dinner earlier, although he still couldn't understand her change of mood and why she was going hot and cold on him in minutes. Her antics downstairs as she exited the Jeep replayed in his head, and he wondered what that was about. A sudden gust of wind rushed towards them, causing the electric bonfire to flicker under its force. Nathaniel sighed as he began to feel the chill penetrating his bones despite the warmth of the lit fire. "Nathan, are you okay?" Aria asked when he'd gone quiet all of a sudden. He flashed her a smile, and Aria's heart tightened at the sadness and defeat in his beautiful eyes. "I'm going to need my medication soon," he rasped. Aria got up immediately and went to his side. "Let's go. We've had enough fun for the day," Aria said. Nathaniel chuckled. "Yes, Mom," he quipped. As they exited the restaurant's main exit, Aria could see that Nathaniel's men were in position waiting for them. His Jeep was already parked up front, and the back door opened. Just when they were about 10 feet away from the car, another car pulled up behind Nathaniel's Jeep. Aria automatically glanced in that direction and saw a lady get out of the car. "Oh, shit!" Aria exclaimed in a mix of panic and disbelief, causing Nathaniel to start to turn to look in that direction. However, Aria stopped him and made him hurry his steps to the car, literally dragging him with her into the car. She let out a sigh of relief when Nathaniel's driver shut the door and hurried to the driver's side. Nathaniel's bodyguards habitually positioned themselves beside his car, ensuring it moved before they rushed to their own. Consequently, when the woman spotted Nathaniel's car and attempted to get past the guards to attract his attention, the vehicle began to move. Aria couldn't contain her laughter, but she quickly remembered she wasn't alone and glanced at Nathaniel, who had noticed the woman she was trying to avoid. He chuckled, and Aria playfully smacked his chest, prompting him to start coughing. "Shit! I'm sorry," she muttered, and quickly unscrewed a bottle of water and helped him to drink it. "Quit laughing, Nathan," she scolded. But Nathaniel continued to chuckle. Taking a deep breath to stifle his cough, he maintained eye contact with Aria. Observing how her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, she retrieved his medication bag and ensured he took his pills. When Nathaniel finally regained enough composure to speak, his voice carried a huskier tone than usual. "It's been 6 years since Harvard, and you're still running from Agatha McCarthy," Nathaniel teased. Aria rolled her eyes at him. "I'm not running," she said, exhaling theatrically in exasperation. As a grown woman with children, the idea of fleeing from Nathan's former flame seemed absurd. Besides, she was convinced that the woman must belong to some witch coven back in her hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana. Nathaniel was tempted to laugh at Aria's comical expressions and reactions, but he knew he would start coughing again. So, he cleared his throat, watching her with eyes filled with amusement and a smile playing on his lips. Aria responded with a playful finesse. "You said to end the day on a light note." "I'm just following your orders, boss." Nathaniel couldn't contain himself. He burst into laughter. She playfully swatted him again, giving him a mock glare which only made him laugh harder before succumbing to a coughing fit. "Aren't you annoying right now, Nathaniel Hawthorne?" Aria scolded, pulling him close so he could lean against her chest as she offered him more water. Nathaniel gazed affectionately into her eyes, recalling all she had endured just to be by his side. "So is this place a regular dining spot for you two now?" Aria inquired, once Nathaniel's coughing had subsided. He shook his head and responded, "I haven't been back here since our last visit," his voice hoarse. "My life took a turn for the worse after you left me," he husked, maintaining eye contact with her. Aria's heart swelled at his admission, yet she also felt a pang of sorrow for his suffering. "I didn't leave you, Nathan," Aria whispered. "We fought, and you shut me out," she added in an emotional whisper. Nathaniel shrugged indifferently. "I remember it differently," he replied, and looked away from her. When they got back to Nathaniel's house, Aria saw Julia's car in front of the building and let out a shaky breath. As soon as Julia spotted Nathaniel's car, she hurried to the front porch, well aware that Nathaniel wouldn't publicly reject her in front of his employees. "Darling, I came as soon as I heard about Tom. How dreadful for the poor old thing," she exclaimed in feigned distress as she rushed to meet Nathaniel, throwing her arms around his neck for a kiss. She sensed his stiffness, his hands framing her waist in an obvious attempt to push her away, but she held on, kissing him despite his unresponsiveness. "Damn this woman!" she raged inwardly. Nathaniel had once enjoyed her company, but now he acted as if she were an undesirable intruder. I'll be in my room," Aria announced as she walked past them, avoiding eye contact. It had been a trying day, and the last thing she wanted was to witness another woman kissing Nathaniel. Julia pulled back, shooting a glare in Aria's direction before refocusing on Nathaniel. "Is he going to be all right, at least?" she asked, her tone concerned. Nathaniel didn't immediately respond, his eyes following Aria as she ascended the stairs and disappeared through the entrance doors. Returning his attention to Julia, he slowly disentangled himself from her embrace, putting some distance between them by stepping up a staircase. He wiped his lips, his gaze holding hers, noting the flash of anger in her eyes. "What are you doing here, Julia?" Nathaniel inquired in a low, cold tone. "What do you mean?" "Tom and I may have our differences, but I wouldn't wish him harm." "I know how important he is to you," she replied. "Did you say was?" Nathaniel asked, narrowing his eyes. "Shit!" Julia cursed inwardly. "So the old bastard is still alive," she thought to herself. "I'm sorry, is he all right then?" she quickly amended, looking contrite. "Yeah, he's fine. Thank you. How's John?" Nathaniel asked, still watching her closely, observing every nuance of her expression. "He was fine the last time I saw him. Why do you ask?" Julia replied casually. "Nothing. Just curious," Nathaniel said, starting to ascend the stairs. Julia moved to follow, but Nathaniel signaled to Andrew, and immediately 3 guards blocked her path. "What's the meaning of this?" "Get out of my way," Julia growled, fists clenched at her sides. "You need to go home now, Miss Davies," Andrew said politely, avoiding eye contact. "Nathaniel," Julia called indignantly. "You asked for a break, Julia. I'm giving you one." "Go home," Nathaniel stated firmly, walking inside and leaving Julia to her fate. "Ah," Julia fumed, marching stiffly down the stairs to her car. Her driver stood by the door waiting. He quickly opened it as she approached. Julia seethed silently. Nathaniel had never treated her so disrespectfully and coldly before. It was that annoying woman's fault, and of course that old goat, Tom. Why can't the bastard just die? She thought to herself in anger and bitterness. Earlier in the day, she had visited her father's office to discuss ways to expedite Nathaniel's wedding to her, only to be informed that he was in a crucial meeting with Tom Hill and was not to be disturbed. Curious, she feigned a trip to the restroom and stealthily made her way past her father's office to eavesdrop on their conversation. "Careful, soon enough my daughter will also be called a Hawthorne," she overheard her father say. "Ha ha!" Tom Hill had laughed disdainfully, igniting a deep-seated hatred within her. Then he added, "We will see." Julia heard footsteps approaching and hurried away to avoid being caught. In the restroom, seething with anger at her reflection, she fought the urge to confront Tom. She had no idea why Tom despised her. She had always been courteous to him and had never clashed with him before. Yes, he was Nathaniel's godfather, and the old man obviously needed to be reminded that he wasn't Nathaniel's father. So what if he was friends with Nathaniel's late father? He was merely a lawyer under the Hawthorne's employment, and that was all. Julia waited until Tom Hill left before exiting the restroom. However, upon entering her father's office, she found him staring out of the glass wall with a drink in hand, which concerned her given the time of day. When her father noticed her, he turned around, glaring at her with contained anger. "I've warned you repeatedly to be discreet in your affairs, especially when targeting Nathaniel Hawthorne," John Davies said, his anger barely contained. "What are you talking about?" Julia replied, her voice trembling with fear at her father's words, especially since Tom Hill had just left his office. "Don't play coy with me, girl. I know about your affair with your photographer, that nobody shouldn't be anywhere near my daughter," John growled. "Daddy!" Julia exclaimed in shock and disbelief. "Guess who else knows? Tom Hill." "And do you know what he can do with that information?" John said, his gaze piercing. "That's impossible. Sean and I were discreet," Julia whispered, shaken. "Then explain why Tom Hill was bold enough to refer to you as a whore right in front of me." John Davies growled, visibly annoyed. Julia paled. "Daddy, we need to stop him. He can ruin everything by telling Nathaniel, and then I'll lose him," Julia pleaded. "We? I'm sorry, baby girl, I can't help you anymore. If you can't secure Nathaniel Hawthorne on your own, then be prepared to marry your photographer," John Hill said with disgust, pouring himself another drink before turning away dismissively. Julia hurried out of her father's office in a panic and made a call. Evidently that hadn't helped her course. damn it all," she muttered, dialing the number again. "Your men failed," she growled quietly into the phone. "Calm down, love. Tell me what happened." "I'll text you," she said, aware of being overheard. She quickly sent a text to her contact. "He's alive. Your men failed. How could they fail to eliminate an old goat?" A reply came asking, "Where is he now?" Julia glanced out of the car window and saw Nathaniel's men still waiting for her to leave. Thinking she could get the information of Tom Hill's whereabouts from them, she took a calming breath and lowered the window. Flashing a smile at Andrew, Nathaniel's head of security, she said, "Andrew, I apologize for trying to disobey your orders. Even if Nathaniel and I are having a lover's quarrel, I shouldn't put you in a difficult position with your boss, right? I'm concerned about Tom and would like to visit him." "Can you please tell me which hospital he was taken to?" she said, mustering her sweetest tone. However, Andrew and his team remained unresponsive. Julia tried to contain her anger, but it didn't last long. "Are you all deaf or just pretending?" Julia snapped, her frustration evident. "I'm sorry, Miss Davies, but you need to leave the property," Andrew asserted. "That's my order." Julia rolled her eyes and rolled up the car window. "Let's get out of here," she instructed her driver. "Yes, miss," he replied, starting the engine. Julia sighed and sent a text to her contact. "They wouldn't tell me. His men act like a group of Hawthorne's cultists." The man replied, "Send me his phone number. We'll track him down. Don't worry, love." Julia quickly texted Tom Hill's phone number and settled back in her seat. While her contact dealt with Tom, she decided to address the situation with Dr. Everly. The woman must have some secrets she could use to force her out of Nathaniel's house and life, and Julia was determined to find them. "It's not over, Dr. Everly," Julia muttered menacingly. After ensuring the security team stationed at Tom's hospital was still in position, Nathaniel proceeded to take a bath, slipping into his pajamas before retiring to bed. It had been an exhausting day, leaving him utterly drained. Yet, a nagging suspicion lingered in his mind that something had transpired between Tom and the Davies, leading to Tom's accident. It would be foolish to overlook what the Davies stood to lose, and Nathaniel was acutely aware of the consequences if they crossed a certain line, and Tom played a pivotal role in that scenario. Perhaps Tom had uncovered something the Davies wished to keep hidden, prompting them to take drastic measures. Determined to uncover the truth, Nathaniel resolved that if Tom did not come forward with information, he would need to pursue it himself. As for Julia, besides needing to assert that she couldn't manipulate their relationship, Nathaniel felt compelled to demonstrate to Tom that he remained in control. Perhaps such a display would instill trust in Tom, encouraging him to confide in Nathaniel. As he settled beneath the covers, Nathaniel's thoughts drifted to his dinner with Aria, particularly the encounter with Agatha McCarthy, eliciting a smile. His eyelids fluttered shut, then opened again as he imagined Aria beside him, her radiant smile lighting up his face. It would have been the perfect end to the day. "Good night, my love," he whispered softly to himself. Closing his eyes, a pang of sorrow prickled at the back of his mind, at the thought that he might not awaken to see the next day. "If I don't wake up, know that I am sorry," he murmured before drifting off to sleep, forgetting to open the adjoining door. Unaware of what had occurred after she left Nathaniel and Julia alone on the porch, Aria assumed they were together and neglected to open the adjoining door, figuring Nathaniel would attend to it if necessary. After her bath, she checked the time. It was 9 p.m., and called her rented apartment to inquire about the boys. Her aunt picked up the call promptly. "I've been waiting for you to call," her aunt greeted from the other end, prompting a chuckle from Aria. "Don't worry, I'm still alive, and I haven't popped Julia Davies in her perfectly done nose either," Aria whispered with a hint of humor. Her aunt's laughter echoed through the phone. "Everything is going well here too. Anita has begun following your outline schedule. She let the boys choose their topic for the day, and they opted for mathematics. However, when she suggested starting with simple addition and subtraction, Owen politely informed her that they were already well beyond that," her aunt recounted, mimicking Owen's voice. Aria couldn't help but chuckle. "Poor Anita," she said. "Poor Anita, indeed," her aunt continued. She had no clue she was dealing with little geniuses. Liam took pity on her and suggested problem-solving activities to foster critical thinking skills through math games and puzzles. Afterward, Anita took them out to get ice cream, and to their curiosity, the boys insisted on taking the stairs. I'm not sure who was more exhausted afterward, Anita or the boys. Anita went straight to bed after dinner, her aunt relayed. Aria chuckled softly, reflecting on how quickly her boys had taken to learning, even at just a year old. She had eagerly begun teaching them herself, relishing in their rapid progress. By the time they reached school age, they were well ahead of their peers. However, the school suggested enrolling them in a special program elsewhere, which Aria adamantly opposed. She couldn't bear the thought of being separated from her children. Determined to continue homeschooling them, she hoped Anita wouldn't give up on helping just yet. That sounds like quite a day. "I'll try to come over tomorrow morning. I'm sure I'll hear all about it. Perhaps I should bring a little something to sweeten Anita up. Thank you, Auntie. I can't express enough gratitude to you and Anita for all your help." "Nonsense! It's nothing. You know the boys are a joy to be around. Being with them gives me a purpose," her aunt reassured her. "I was thinking we could get a chef to help with the cooking. Not a live-in one, though. It would give you time, too, to explore with the boys and Anita. I will make arrangements to have our new car delivered by Thursday so the new driver can give us a test drive around town," Aria suggested. That sounds tempting," her aunt replied, pondering aloud. "Don't worry, Auntie. Chefs usually have days off so you can have the kitchen to yourself to bake for the boys," Aria assured. Okay then, Aria, her aunt replied. Thank you, Auntie, Aria said with a smile. After ending the call, she quickly sent a text to Mrs. Watson about helping to find a good chef. Just as she was about to settle under the duvet to sleep, the house phone rang by her bedside. With furrowed brows, she picked it up. Hello, she said into the phone hesitantly. Sorry to disturb you, Dr. Everly, but there's a Dr. Rowan on the phone for you. Should I put him through? Mrs. Jonas, Nathaniel's housekeeper, said from the other line. Yes. Of course, thank you, Mrs. Jonas, Aria quickly replied, puzzled as to why Sebastian was calling her. If anything had happened to Tom, he would be calling Nathaniel, not her, she thought with concern. Yet, the older man's prognosis wasn't dire, so she knew it must not be an emergency. Hello? Sebastian's voice jolted her out of her thoughts. Hello, Sebastian, is Tom all right? Aria inquired. Oh, of course, Mr. Hill is fine. I'm sorry if I alarmed you, especially trying to reach you through the Hawthorne residence. I didn't have your phone number and wanted to ensure I hadn't caused any rift between you and Nathaniel Hawthorne, Sebastian explained. Aria smiled to herself. No, you didn't. It's no problem at all, Aria replied, without divulging more information. There was an awkward silence for about a minute before Sebastian clearly got the message. Great, Sebastian said with a sigh of relief, making Aria chuckle. So now that you're back in New York, do you have any concrete plans? I imagine, of course, that you are back. Sebastian probed. A few days ago, Aria would have emphatically told him no, that she wasn't staying and her visit was going to be short, but now she wasn't quite sure. Things weren't as straightforward as they had been when she arrived, and now she would have to consider many things before even thinking about leaving and going back to her life in Sylvan Ridge. It's a little complicated, but I will keep you informed when I have made my decision, Aria replied. Okay then, would you be open to a coffee break from whatever you have going on? Let's make it my apology for being such a loose mouth, Sebastian suggested, making Aria laugh. In that case, shouldn't you be inviting Nathan instead? Aria teased. I think I would prefer you to accept my apology on his behalf. I'm very certain he doesn't like me, Sebastian replied. Aria scoffed. Nonsense. He is just naturally aloof to everyone outside his circle, she countered. I think it's more than that, but let's give it a rest. What do you say to coffee tomorrow? Let's say around noonish, Sebastian invited. Aria was about to decline, but she paused and thought better of it. Nathaniel's condition is not public knowledge, and she would be breaking his confidence if she chose to tell Sebastian even though they were friends. I can't tomorrow, but I can squeeze in a few minutes on Sunday. What do you say? Excellent. And it might be a good idea for you to share your phone number with me. I was thoroughly grilled by Hawthorne's men before they connected me to you. Trust me, I've made calls to the White House before, and that was nothing compared to what I just experienced, Sebastian quipped. Aria laughed. Nathaniel woke up with a sensation of heaviness, pressing down on his chest, each breath labored. Gradually, a sense of panic and fear gripped him as he quietly analyzed his situation. He felt immobilized, struggling to draw air, with the urge to cough seizing him as blood spilled from his mouth. His eyes darted to the adjoining door, finding it closed, and he knew he was majorly fucked. His fear intensified. Unable to call out and feeling somewhat paralyzed, he attempted to employ the calming breathing techniques Aria had taught him. Though he managed to move slightly, it offered only slight relief. Summoning all his strength, he reached for the bell chain, relieved when it chimed loudly in the room. Letting his hand fall uselessly to the bed, he waited for help to arrive or for his fate to unfold. Aria, just finishing putting on her jogging clothes, paused at the sound of the bell. She remembered Julia pulling the golden bell by Nathaniel's bed once, and assumed she might have needed something from Nathaniel's staff. As she tied the laces of her jogging shoes, another sound caught her attention. It sounded like labored breathing as someone desperate for air. The house was quiet in the early morning, making it easy to discern such subtle noises. A thought struck her that Nathaniel might need help, prompting her to open the adjoining door without concern for catching anyone in a state of undress. However, upon opening the door, she found Nathaniel alone in the room, gasping for air. "Nathan!" she cried out loud, rushing to his bedside. Her surgeon instinct surfaced. One look at his heaving chest with blood in his mouth and on his jaw spilling over his chest, and she knew immediately that his condition was critical. "Baby, I'm so sorry," she whispered, feeling terrible that she hadn't opened the adjoining door as she should have the previous night and hadn't immediately responded to the bell earlier. To confirm her suspicion, she pressed down on Nathaniel's chest and watched as pain etched his features. Nathaniel grunted in agony. "Painful," he managed to say. Aria dashed away, rushing to her bags, retrieving her medical kit, then hurried back to Nathaniel's room. Ignoring the door opening as Nathaniel's men rushed in, she sobbed as she pulled him by the legs to ensure he was lying flat on the bed. "I need someone here, beside me," Aria heard herself say in a voice she hardly recognized as her own. Andrew quickly moved to stand where she pointed. "I need hot water or scotch, whatever you can get," she said to no one in particular, and one of them rushed out to fulfill her request. "I need a straw or anything similar," she demanded, all the while bringing out her scalpel and keeping her gaze fixed on Nathaniel, who didn't take his eyes off her either. Kneeling by his chest, Aria filtered out the bustle of activities around her as everyone rushed about to fulfill her requests. "Dr. Everly?" "Here," Andrew called her attention, handing over an open bottle of scotch. Aria took it from him and poured some on her scalpel, even though she knew it was already clean. Using cotton wool, she rubbed some on Nathaniel's throat. "I'm sorry, baby. If we wait, I will lose you," Aria said. Nathaniel nodded. Even in his state, he caught on that she hadn't used a collective verb. She had said, "I will lose you." "Hold him down. Do not let him move," Aria ordered. Andrew was already on one side of Nathaniel, while Charles moved to the other side, and the two held him down by the shoulders. Another of his men came to hold his head steady, assisting in baring his throat. Aria put a small folded napkin in Nathaniel's mouth for him to bite on, and using her scalpel, she made a small vertical incision through Nathaniel's skin and subcutaneous tissue overlying the cricothyroid membrane, a small area of the neck located between the thyroid cartilage, Adam's apple, and the cricoid cartilage. The only sound in the room was Nathaniel's grunting. No one moved. Once Aria identified Nathaniel's cricothyroid membrane, she inserted a straw missus Jonas had brought through the incision and into the trachea, securing it in place to maintain a patent airway. She then kept him ventilated with a nasal cannula she had in her medical bag. "It's going to be fine, baby, okay?" she said in a soft, calming voice, stroking his temple and flashing him a wavering smile. Nathaniel blinked in acknowledgement as tears streamed down the sides of his eyes. Aria suppressed the urge to cry, but her lips shook nonetheless. "Can we move him now? The helicopter is ready to take him to the hospital, and the ambulance is also on its way," Andrew said from her side. She nodded. About 10 minutes later, medical personnel flooded the room, followed by an older gentleman in a doctor's robe. He came to a halt when he saw Nathaniel, fear in his eyes as he quickly surveyed him, and then his eyes drifted to Aria with relief. "Well done, Dr. Everly," Dr. Williams said. Aria couldn't hold back the tears. She turned away and sobbed quietly, thinking that if she had continued to ignore the bell and had gone off to see their sons and hadn't peeked into his room, he would have died right there, and she would never have forgiven herself. She felt a gentle pat on her back and nodded in acknowledgement. "Please give me a second," she murmured. "Of course, Doctor, but I'm guessing you would want to come with us," Dr. Williams said. Aria nodded, wiped her face, and turned around to face him. "I'm ready," she breathed. The older man smiled at her. Aria didn't bother changing. She felt numb at the possibility of what could have happened. She followed Nathaniel's medical team to the hospital on a helicopter ride, covered in Nathaniel's blood. At the hospital, Nathaniel was hooked up to a proper ventilator, and Dr. Williams invited Aria to be part of the medical team to remove the makeshift tracheostomy tube and patch Nathaniel up. When Aria was certain that Nathaniel was out of danger and was merely sleeping, she wandered out of the hospital room to go to the reception room and use the hospital phone to call her aunt. She apologized for not being able to make it there that morning and told her what had happened. "Oh my, I'm so sorry, dear. Please don't worry about the boys. They are fine. You can video call them later when you find a chance. Please take care. We'll have you and Nathaniel in our prayers," her aunt had said. After the call, she made her way back to Nathaniel's room to sit by his side. Holding his left hand in hers, she pressed a kiss to the back of his hand and whispered, "I'm here, Nathan. I'm right here, my love. Around 6 p.m., Tom Hill's eyelids fluttered open to the sound of guards discussing something involving Dr. Everly and Nathaniel. Unaware that he was awake, they chatted on about the ordeal. Man, it was scary. You should have been there. I have never seen anything like it. I mean, I have seen blood, but it was something magical to see her take charge like that. I would have been a mess, one of the guards said. She wasn't calm. She was crying, but still, she did her job. Mad respect, I'll tell you. I have a whole new respect for doctors. Another chimed in. She is not just any doctor, though. She is a surgeon. Another interjected. Yes, she is. She saved the boss's life, man, they continued to discuss. Tom Hill's heart rate increased, causing the monitor to start beeping. The guards, startled, stopped talking and directed their attention to him. Mr. Hill, are you okay? Mark, one of the guards asked with concern. I'm fine. Is Nathaniel okay? Tom Hill asked. Mark nodded. He is fine. Dr. Everly took care of him. He is in Dr. Williams's hospital now. He is fine, sir. You can rest, he promptly replied. Tom Hill nodded. Shortly after, nurses, alerted by the beeping monitor, came in to check on him. What happened? One of the nurses asked with concern. Nothing. Please, is Dr. Rowan around? Tom Hill asked. Why? Is something wrong? Another nurse replied. He is supposed to authorize my discharge today, I think. Or can any other doctor do that? Tom Hill asked. Dr. Rowan is your doctor, so he has to be the one to authorize your discharge, another nurse explained. We will let him know you want to see him as soon as he arrives, another nurse replied. Tom Hill nodded and managed to smile. Can you have someone bring in a wheelchair? I would like to go out and stay for a while in the garden if it's okay, Tom Hill said, plotting an escape. He knew he couldn't leave the hospital without being cleared by the doctor, and the guards had strict instructions not to let him leave. His clothes had been damaged in the accident, and no one had brought a change of clothes yet. He knew if he asked the guards, they would know what he was up to. I will be right back, one of the nurses said with a smile, and left. Tom Hill was wheeled to the garden, surrounded by bodyguards. He made them stop just by a hedge of thick shrubs and sat there staring into space, waiting until the guards would tire of watching him and stroll around. His opportunity came around 6 p.m. when the guards were distracted, and he took the chance to get off the wheelchair and sneak away. It wasn't easy with one arm in a cast and wearing a hospital robe with a bare back, but he managed to escape the hospital grounds and made his way into the streets. He attracted a few stares as he strode down the streets of New York in a hospital robe, but he didn't care. He tried to flag down a taxi, but none stopped for him. Deciding to keep walking, he took alleyways and even got offered a blanket by a homeless guy. I think you need this more than me, the toothless guy had offered. Tom Hill thanked the man and took the blanket, flinching at the stale stench that oozed from it. He contemplated dropping it as he wrapped it around his waist instead, but thought better of it. He let out a sigh of relief when he rounded a street on Madison Avenue, knowing the house wasn't too far away now. A low giggle drew his attention to the front of a building, and he took a quick glance in that direction. His eyes caught sight of a boy bundled in a jacket smiling at him. You dress funny, mister, the boy said. Tom Hill flashed a smile at the little boy and kept walking, but after a few strides, he stopped in his tracks and slowly turned around to look at the boy. No, boys. Tom Hill quietly noted as another boy standing by turned around in his direction. You running away? One of them said with a raised eyebrow. Like in the movies, the other said with giggles. Maybe, Tom Hill replied. The two boys laughed, an infectious sight that lit up his inside. You want chocolate? One of them offered. Tom Hill swallowed hard and nodded, momentarily forgetting his mission as he walked back to take the chocolate bar from the boy. The boy was looking at him in a familiar way that made his heart tighten with emotions. Do you live here? Tom Hill asked. The one beside the one who gave him a chocolate bar was about to reply, but the other quickly covered his mouth with his small hand. Stranger danger, Liam, he whispered forcefully. The one covering the other one's mouth leveled a suspicious look at Tom Hill and said, what you want, mister? Tom Hill raised his hands up in evident surrender. Fair enough. Talking to strangers isn't good, but giving a stranger a chocolate bar is quite nice. And this stranger is Tom Hill. Forgive my state. I was running, as you guessed, from a doctor who refused to discharge me. I live close by, though. Perhaps I might meet and thank your parents for raising such intelligent, kind gentlemen. That is, if you tell me their names, Tom Hill said. The boys exchanged a look, pondering his request. Does wanting to meet their parents make him good or bad? Liam shrugged. Our mum is a doctor, Liam supplied. Is she? Well then, I might know her. I surely hope she's not the one I'm running from, Tom Hill said with a theatrical grimace, making the boys laugh. Liam? Owen? A female voice called from inside the building lobby. What are you doing out there? I told you to wait here for me. My God, she said in evident exasperation. Oops, busted, Owen said, and the boys shared a look before bursting into giggles. Tom Hill couldn't take his eyes off them. We gotta go now. That's Aunt Anita, Liam said. Wait, Tom Hill started to say, but the boys rushed back inside. Tom Hill felt crestfallen as he watched the boys leave. He hadn't gotten enough time to get to know more about them. They looked so much like Nathaniel, it was uncanny, as if Nathaniel had been cloned. They resembled him exactly at that age. How was that possible? His heart skipped a beat when one of them ran back, and the door opened automatically for him. He offered Tom Hill a handshake. Be safe, mister. I am Liam, my twin, Owen Hawthorne, he said. Tom Hill's heart stopped for about a second before it resumed beating. He shook the tiny hand in a daze. Nice to meet you, Liam Hawthorne. You and your brother are remarkable young men, Tom Hill said. Liam beamed. I know big words. Remarkable means cool, he said with a proud smile. I bet you do, Tom Hill rasped. Is your mum, by any chance, Dr. Aria Everly? Tom Hill asked with bated breath. Ah, you know my mum, Liam replied with a brightened face. But then the smile disappeared as he added, If you're hiding from her, mister, I can't help. Sorry, he said with concern. Tom Hill nodded. I suppose I'd better run faster then, he replied. Liam nodded in solemn agreement. When the female voice called his name again, he gasped and said, Bye, Mr. Hill, and rushed back inside. For about a minute, Tom Hill couldn't move. Then he slowly trudged to the side of the sidewalk and rested his back on the framing wall. Be safe, mister. I am Liam, my twin Owen Hawthorne, the little voice repeated in his head. Our mum is a doctor. The voices continued to replay in his head. He shut his eyes as tears welled up in them, spilling down his face as he recalled Nathaniel as a boy, his smile, his laughter. He swallowed hard. So then this must be Dr. Everly's secret. Nathaniel has twin boys. Tom Hill arrived at the Hawthorne residence still in a daze. He didn't miss the knowing smirk Andrew threw his way when he saw him. Not a word out of you, Andrew MacLeod, Tom Hill warned as he strode past Nathaniel's head of security. Yes, Mr. Hill. I was about to go back to the hospital to check on the boss. Care for a ride? Andrew replied with evident mirth. Allow me a moment to freshen up. I believe I've caused quite a stir already today, Tom Hill replied. About 10 minutes later, the two were on their way to the hospital. The security details stationed at the hospital to watch you are still looking for you, by the way, Andrew said. Serves them right. They should know better, Tom Hill replied. Andrew chuckled. Were you there when it happened? Tom Hill suddenly asked, pausing to give Andrew a sidelong glance. I heard Dr. Everly save Nathaniel's life, Tom Hill added. Andrew nodded, the smile on his face disappearing. It wasn't a pretty sight, but Boss stayed strong. She had to operate on him without putting him to sleep first. It was heartbreaking to watch, Andrew said in a solemn tone. Tom Hill let out a sigh. I'll be forever grateful that he made the decision to bring her to him, Tom Hill said under his breath. I know it's not my place, but I was there to witness the relationship between the boss and Dr. Everly.